The sea is a place of both memory and forgetting. It holds within its shifting depths the bones of empires, and the dreams of sailors who swore they saw lands that others would later deny. Long before satellites traced the shape of the continents, before engines cut straight lines through oceans, there were whispers of a kingdom that should not exist, an island so strange, so radiant in the stories of those who claim to have set foot upon it, that it lingers in 12 separate myths from cultures scattered across the face of the earth. 12 traditions, 12 voices, speaking across time and yet describing the same impossible place. The coincidence, it is borders on the absurd. How could civilizations separated by thousands of miles with no shared maps, no common language, and often no awareness of each other's existence conjure the same vision, a shining coast rising from the mist, towers of dark stone, gardens heavy with fruit unknown anywhere else, a sky at dusk painted in unnatural colors? It is here in the tension between what we are told is possible and what we are told is not that the legend of the island kingdom takes root. The historian's lens is cautious and perhaps rightly so. In the archives such stories are filed alongside the great myths Atlantis, Lemuria, Avalon, comfortably shelved in the category of cultural metaphor. They become parables, moral tales, dreamscapes for poets and priests, rather than clues to any real geography. The reasoning is tidy. Humanity has always imagined perfect lands just beyond reach, places untouched by the corruptions of the everyday world. To the scholar, the kingdom appears as another iteration of this eternal longing, a mirror in which each culture sees its own highest ideals. Yet there are those who look closer and notice the imperfections in the mirror, imperfections that might be reflections of something concrete, something stubbornly real. These believers, whether scholars on the fringe or amateur researchers, hunched over faded maritime charts, point to details that seem too specific to be dreamt in pen. In the Irish, telling the wind changes direction abruptly as one nears the island, carrying a scent of flowers, not native to the North Atlantic. In a fragment of a 10th century Chinese scroll, the same sudden wind shift is described, and the same floral scent, though the flowers are given another name. In Polynesian, oral tradition, the kingdom is always approached under a moon that hangs low and blood-red over the horizon, and in Norse sagas, the same moon heralds the sighting of the Western Jewel. These are not vague metaphors, they are navigational markers, and navigation is a language of precision. If the kingdom never existed, why do these independent accounts converge in ways that match geography, astronomy, and seafaring practice? This question has unsettled those willing to entertain it, for it hints at either a cultural exchange of staggering antiquity, far beyond what mainstream history recognizes, or at the presence of a place that the sea itself has concealed. Some suggest that the island was real, but transient, born of volcanic uplift, and later swallowed by the ocean, a phenomenon we know has shaped coastlines throughout history. Others propose a more elusive possibility, that the island lies not only far away in space, but also somehow removed in time, appearing to different cultures in different eras, leaving just enough evidence to seed myth, and then vanishing again. The journey to untangle these possibilities begins not with a ship's departure but with an act of listening to stories that have been told and retold for centuries, stripped of context in the retelling, distorted by translation and dismissed by those who hold the keys to academic respectability. For most, these stories are atmospheric curiosities, the kind of thing you might hear on a windswept pier from an old sailor with more rum than reason in him. For a few, they are threads in a tapestry whose pattern is just beginning to emerge. Imagine the earliest listeners fishermen in a Celtic village, monks copying Norse chronicles, court historians in an imperial Chinese palace, hearing about this far-off place and weighing its plausibility. They had no way to verify the account, no coordinates to plot on a map, and yet the image of the kingdom would live on in their minds, passed down as if it were a piece of ancestral memory. Over time, the stories would gather embellishments like barnacles on a hull, but the underlying shape would remain the same. An island kingdom in the middle of the great waters, bounded by cliffs of black stone, crowned with gardens protected by walls that glowed in the setting sun. In the modern world where satellites chart every rock above sea level, the notion of a lost island feels almost quaint. Yet, the ocean is vast and secretive. Its depths remain more mysterious to us than the surface of the moon. Submerged mountain chains hide just below the surface, invisible to the naked eye, and some of them could have been islands within the memory of humanity. Entire landmasses have been erased by tsunamis, earthquakes, or the slow swallowing of rising seas. And if the kingdom were more than rock and soil, if it were built on foundations not entirely of this earth, then perhaps its disappearance was not entirely natural. We live in an age where myth and science often stand on opposite shores, shouting across the gulf. But here, in this strange convergence of 12 myths, the shouting quiets and a narrow bridge of possibility seems to appear. Perhaps the bridge is only an illusion, like the shimmering road that rises from a hot horizon. Or perhaps it is real, leading us toward a place whose reality has been hiding in plain sight for millennia. The known history tells us that the kingdom is a fantasy, a shared daydream that says more about the human heart than about any cartography. The hidden truth, if we dare to call it that, whispers that the human heart remembers what the mind has been taught to forget. So we begin our journey into the fog, following the compass points offered by ancient voices, trusting neither wholly in the maps of the past, nor in the skepticism of the present. Ahead lies a place that may never have existed, or that may still exist in ways we have yet to understand. 12 myths will be our 12 constellations, each offering a glimmer of direction. The waters will be uncertain, the currents unpredictable, but the horizon ahead holds a shape we cannot quite name, an outline that might be the island kingdom itself. The first true clue to the island's possible reality does not come from a sprawling epic or a whispered fireside tale. It comes instead from the cramped, uneven handwriting of a man who never intended to write history at all, a Greek mariner from the 2nd century who kept a log of his voyages for his own memory, not for any audience. His name has been lost. His parchment survives only as a copy, recopied again by later hands until the ink blurs at the edges. Yet in its faded lines lies one of the earliest recorded descriptions of a place that should not exist. It begins plainly, like any navigational note: from the pillars we turned south by west, and after 13 days with fair wind, we saw the coast rise from the water. At first glance, nothing unusual. Many traders of the age recorded sightings of islands on their journeys, but then, without flourish or allegory, he describes cliffs as if carved from obsidian, and a harbor that shimmered in a light like bronze beneath the water. This is not the language of metaphor. It is the language of a man trying to record what he sees in practical terms. He notes the wind shifting hard to the east as they approached, the smell of strange flowers in the air, and the unsettling quiet of the harbor. No gulls, no breakers on the shore, only stillness. They did not land. His crew argued about ill omens, and the captain decided to turn away, charting the sighting instead. The mariner dutifully recorded the bearing, the wind patterns, and the sky's color at sunset, a red, not like fire but like the inside of a shell. It is this detail, small and almost poetic, that becomes the first thread linking his account to the legends in other parts of the world. Historians reviewing the parchment centuries later dismissed it as either embellishment or a misidentification of a known island, distorted by distance and weather. They argued that volcanic rock formations could easily be mistaken for black stone cliffs under the right light, and that optical effects on the open ocean might explain the metallic shimmer of the harbor. But these explanations, though plausible in isolation, begin to strain when the navigational details are compared to other records from entirely different cultures. The Greek mariner places his sighting days south by west from the Pillars of Hercules, yet his wind patterns and lunar position narrow the location to a stretch of ocean where no island exists today, or rather no island is officially acknowledged to exist. The practical reader might wonder why this matters. After all, sailors have seen countless phantom islands that later vanish from maps when better surveys are made. In the age of discovery, names like Hy Brasil, Friesland and the Isle of Demons appeared and disappeared from charts almost whimsically. Yet the mariner's log stands apart for two reasons. First, its date. It predates most phantom island sightings by over 1,000 years, pushing the phenomenon deep into antiquity. Second, and more troubling for skeptics, are the details that match sightings from cultures that could not have had any contact with the Greek maritime world. The obsidian-like cliffs appear again in a 9th century Norse saga, in a context that offers no indication the author knew Greek records existed. The metallic glow of the harbor surfaces in Polynesian chants about a land that gleams like the sun trapped in the sea. Even the curious description of a red shell-like sky appears in a Chinese mariner's account from the Tang dynasty, with no possibility of textual borrowing from the Mediterranean world. These repeating markers act like constellations. Single stars might be chance, but when enough align they form a recognizable shape. It is worth pausing to imagine what it must have felt like for that Greek sailor to see the kingdom rise from the horizon. Weeks at sea, the world reduced to the curve of the ocean, the wind, the creak of ropes, and then suddenly, land that should not be there. The decision not to land seems almost anticlimactic to a modern mind, hungry for exploration, but to them it might have been the most prudent choice. In the 2nd century, an unknown coast was as likely to bring death as wonder. Disease, hostile inhabitants, or even the wrath of the gods were real and immediate fear. The ocean was not yet mapped, and no one knew where its edges lay. To turn away was survival, even if it meant leaving mystery untouched. Yet turning away did not erase the sighting. That single day's encounter traveled through the mariner's words, copied and recopied, surviving fire, plagues, and the decay of libraries. It lay dormant until scholars, centuries later, began to notice the echoes it shared with other legends. It was a seed, unnoticed by the gardener, sprouting in distant soil. The official interpretation has always leaned toward the mundane navigational error. Mirage, volcanic island now collapsed beneath the waves. Such answers are tidy, but they require a certain blindness to coincidence. For when you place the mariner's notes beside the other 11 myths that speak of the kingdom, it is as though the lines of a forgotten map begin to draw themselves. The coordinates are not exact, but the overlap is too large to ignore. The kingdom appears in places it should not, beyond the limits of ancient ship range, across hostile currents, in latitudes that would require advanced navigation tools, centuries before their invention. Those who chase this mystery often return to the mariner's log as their starting point. His account is the first to offer something concrete: direction, wind, sky, smell, and sight, stripped of the grand narrative that turns most myths into morality plays. It is unadorned, and perhaps for that reason, it feels truer than the embellished epics that followed. He was not trying to convince anyone of the island's greatness, only to record its presence in the way sailors record reefs or currents, quietly, factually, and without expectation that it would matter. And yet, it mattered more than he could have known. From this point forward in our investigation, the mariner's quiet sighting becomes the needle by which all other threads are measured. Whether it was the edge of a real kingdom, or only a phantom born of light and longing, it left a mark on the sea's unwritten history. The question is not simply whether the island existed in his time, but whether it has always existed, slipping in and out of reach, appearing to those few whose course aligns with forces they do not understand. The Greek mariner's words may be the first chart to that place, but they will not be the last. Others, far across oceans and centuries, will add their own bearings, their own glimpses of a coast that rises from nowhere, solid and impossible, under the eternal sky. The legends of the far north and the misty west seem, at first glance, to inhabit entirely separate worlds. The Celtic bards, standing on windswept cliffs at the edge of Ireland, sang of Tir na Noga, the land of eternal youth, where no one grew old, no sorrow touched the heart, and every day was bathed in the gentle gold of a never-setting sun. In the Norse sagas written in runes by firelight, in longhouses half buried against the cold, another name surfaced, Thule, the northernmost land known to man, a place of strange light and fertile soil in a realm otherwise ruled by ice. For centuries, scholars have placed these two stories in their own cultural silos, attributing their similarities to the shared Indo-European roots of the peoples who told them. And yet, when the details are stripped of their cultural clothing, the bones of the stories align in ways that are difficult to dismiss as coincidence. Both lands are reached by a journey that requires a change in the wind's direction, a strange and sudden shift that unsettles seasoned sailors. Both lands are guarded by black cliffs that rise straight from the sea, a sheer and forbidding barrier, and both lands speak of a fortress, massive, ancient, and built not from timber or granite but from stone darker than night, polished to a sheen that reflects the sky like glass. These are not poetic abstractions, they are architectural details echoed in cultures that never shared a blueprint. In Ireland's Tir na Nog, the fortress is home to the gods themselves, its gates opening only to those deemed worthy. In Norse Thule, the fortress is not the dwelling of gods but the stronghold of an ancient king, whose reign ended in fire. The interpretations differ, but the structure remains the same, black stone walls set on high cliffs, overlooking a shore where the waves strike but never erode. Modern geologists point out that such descriptions could match certain volcanic formations, basalt in particular, which can form massive hexagonal cliffs when cooled. Yet the storytellers were not geologists, and their descriptions are not limited to the rock. They speak of symmetry, deliberate angles and carvings that speak of human or perhaps inhuman craftsmanship. The Norse and Celtic worlds were closer geographically than many others we will explore, but the specific elements that bind their tales go beyond what could be explained by limited trade or accidental cultural borrowing. Consider the constellations. In both traditions, the arrival at the island is marked by the rising of a specific star pattern just before dawn, a detail with no symbolic necessity in the myth's moral purpose. In the Norse version, these stars are called the Sjartar horn, the horn of the stag, while in the Celtic telling, they are the hunter's crown. The shapes are the same, the names differ. More intriguingly, astronomical reconstruction shows that in the late Iron Age, this star pattern would only appear low on the horizon in the far western seas during specific weeks of the year. For two separate cultures to describe this same navigational sign as the herald of a mysterious land suggests not shared imagination, but shared observation. Yet the modern historian remains skeptical. The favored explanation is that Tir na Nog and Thule are metaphorical, reflecting the yearning for a perfect land just out of reach. Celtic warriors seeking a paradise beyond death, Norse seafarers dreaming of a fertile refuge in the frozen world. The stories serve cultural needs, reinforcing values of bravery, endurance, and the pursuit of glory. But the hidden truth seekers, those who comb the details with a different intent, see in these myths the remnants of a real location that both peoples once glimpsed. If the Celtic and Norse sailors ventured far enough into the Atlantic, perhaps carried by storms or drawn by currents they did not understand, they might have sighted the same distant shore. If so, the myths are not allegories, but memories. Consider the ships themselves. Norse Nars and Celtic currachs were both capable, in their own ways, of open sea travel, though built for different conditions, the Nars sturdy and broad for heavy cargo, the currachs light and swift for coastal journeys. both could be pushed far beyond their intended routes under certain winds. A storm from the southeast could carry a Celtic crew hundreds of miles into uncharted waters. The steady push of a northern current could do the same for Norsemen sailing west from Iceland or the Faroes. If the island kingdom existed somewhere in the open Atlantic, in that great cold space between the Old World and the New, then both peoples could have reached it by chance. What they might have seen upon arrival explains much of the awe and mystery preserved in their legends. Imagine emerging from days or weeks at sea to find an island rising before you, not with the gradual slope of sandy beaches, but with sheer black cliffs hundreds of feet high, crowned by walls that gleamed in the setting sun. At the base, perhaps a single break in the cliffs offered entry into a sheltered harbor, the water calm and strangely luminous. For the Celts, this could only be the land of youth, untouched by decay. For the Norse, it might be the last northern outpost, the end of the world. And for both, it would be a place to tell of in hushed tones, for no one could know when or if they might find it again. What binds these stories is not only their shared imagery, but also their shared absence. In both traditions, the return from the island is uncertain. Those who arrive in Tir na Nog cannot stay. To remain would be to forget the world they left behind. Those who reach Tula find no welcome and no sustenance, only the haunting sight of a land that does not want them. Both islands exist on the edge of rejection, as if they are aware of the intrusion and eager to cast the intruder back into the sea. This hostility, or divine protection, becomes part of the myth's fabric, discouraging future voyages and ensuring that the island remains the province of legend rather than colonization. Today, the locations of Tir na Nog and Thule are plotted on tourist maps and speculative websites, each claiming to have identified the real inspiration for the tales. Most of these proposed sites are modest islands, easily explained and thoroughly mapped, rocky outcroppings in the North Atlantic, the Faroes, even Iceland itself. But none of these candidates match the combination of elements described in the original myths: black cliffs, fortress walls, strange light, and celestial markers. The modern search thus runs into the same problem as the ancient one: there is no consensus, and the place refuses to be fixed to a single point on a map. And yet the persistence of these details across two separate cultures remains a puzzle that refuses to dissolve entirely. If there was no real island, why did both the Celtic and Norse worlds choose to anchor their myths to such similar terrain, to such similar astronomical cues, to such similar architecture? The skeptic will say it is because all human cultures draw from the same well of imagination. The believer will say it is because they drew from the same horizon. Between these two positions lies the murky sea, and somewhere beyond that, perhaps the shadow of the black cliffs still waits. Far to the east, in the scrolls and spoken lore of China and Japan, the same kingdom takes on a different name, yet the heart of the story beats with the same rhythm. In the Chinese classics, the island is called Penglai, a place of immortals where the peach trees bear fruit once every 3,000 years, granting eternal life to those who taste it. In Japanese chronicles, it becomes Horai, a remote and unreachable land where sorrow and death cannot enter, and where every stone and plant seems infused with a quiet radiance. These names and images belong firmly to their own cultural landscapes, steeped in the philosophies of Taoism and Shinto. Yet when the stories are unwrapped from their symbolic wrappings, what emerges is startlingly familiar: a journey over the sea to a land guarded by high cliffs, a great fortress of strange stone, and a luminous quality to the air that sets it apart from anywhere else on earth. The first detailed written account of Penglai appears in the Shanhai Jing, the classic of mountains and seas, compiled over centuries and finalized during the early Han Dynasty. It describes a palace built of gold and silver, with towers of jade rising from an island surrounded by swift currents that no mortal ship could cross unaided. Here lived the Shan immortals, who walk in gardens shaded by trees with silver trunks and jeweled leaves. At first, the imagery feels wholly unlike the stark Norse cliffs or the windswept Celtic shores, yet there are certain physical markers that repeat. The Shanhai Jing places Penglai far into the eastern sea, beyond a region of fog and shifting winds. Mariners approaching speak of an unnatural calm in the water and a scent that carries from leagues away, a scent not matched by any known flora. The fortress, though here called a palace, is described as having walls of a dark stone that glisten in the sunlight, even beneath layers of precious metals. Japanese Horai mirrors Penglai so closely that scholars debate whether the two are simply different interpretations of the same imported legend. The Nihon Shoki and later medieval tales describe Horai as lying far to the east, beyond the reach of ordinary fishermen and reachable only by those who are guided there by divine will. The cliffs are white in some tellings, black in others, but always sheer and without safe anchorage except at one guarded harbor. Inside, the gardens are endless, and the seasons never change. Unlike Penglai, Horai often includes an element of moral testing. The unworthy visitor is denied entry or finds the island fading into mist before they can step ashore. Mainstream historians read these stories as allegories. In the Chinese tradition, Penglai is a metaphor for the Taoist ideal, a realm of harmony removed from the chaos of mortal life. In Japan, Horai serves as a vision of divine order and purity, echoing the Shinto reverence for places untouched by corruption. Neither in this interpretation was meant to be a literal map to a physical island, but here is where the known history diverges from the hidden trail of clues. In the archives of Chinese maritime records from the Tang dynasty, there exists a log from an imperial envoy who sailed eastward under orders to chart new trade routes. The ship never returned to its intended port, but fragments of the voyage survive in copies of its manifest and crew journals. Among these is a brief but striking description. We saw the walls rise from the sea, black as the back of a turtle, with the light of the sun broken into many colors upon them. We were turned away by the wind, though no storm blew. This is not the language of allegory. It is a mariner's note stripped of moral instruction, and it carries the same details recorded by the Greek sailor in the far west and by the Norse skalds in the north. Black stone, shifting winds, and a light that seems to refract unnaturally from the surface of the fortress. Even the detail of being turned away, a current or force that repels ships, is a motif that spans from Celtic myth to Polynesian chants. Japanese sources contain similar hints. In the early Edo period, a fishing vessel from the Buzo Peninsula was caught in an unexpected current and carried far out to sea. The crew's account, recorded decades later by a Buddhist monk, tells of an island that appeared suddenly in the morning fog. The water was still as in a well, the air heavy with the scent of plum flowers, though the season was wrong. We saw great walls upon the cliffs, yet no gate to land. When the fog lifted, the island was gone. The monk, interpreting the story, framed it as a visitation from Horai, meant to inspire spiritual reflection. But the sensory details, the smell, the still water, the walls, match too neatly to be ignored. These parallels raise uncomfortable questions for those who cling to purely symbolic interpretations. How is it that a Greek sailor, a Norse saga, a Celtic bard, a Chinese mariner, and a Japanese fisherman all describe fortifications of the same stone in lands reached only after similar wind changes and unusual atmospheric effects? The most conservative answer is that these are recurring archetypes in human storytelling, universal symbols of the unreachable paradise. But to those who suspect more, the repetition begins to look less like shared psychology and more like shared geography. The idea that Penglai and Horai might refer to the same actual place is not without precedent. Some Japanese scholars in the 18th century argued that Horai was a real island, perhaps once visited by Chinese envoys whose location had been lost to memory. The Tokugawa shogunate even authorized exploratory voyages, though these were often framed as fishing expeditions or diplomatic missions to avoid ridicule. None returned with definitive proof, but some brought back stories of islands that did not appear on any chart, appearing briefly and then vanishing from sight. Modern maritime cartography offers another curious detail. When plotting the coordinates given in certain Tang-era records of voyages eastward, the supposed location of Penglai falls within an area of the Pacific known for its anomalous magnetic readings. Ships in this zone have reported compass failures, sudden shifts in wind, and fog banks that appear without warning. While such phenomena can be explained through natural causes, subsurface volcanic activity, magnetic minerals in the seabed, their coincidence with multiple legendary accounts of an inaccessible island is difficult to ignore. Here, the contrast between known history and hidden truth becomes sharp. Official scholarship insists that Penglai and Horai are visions of perfection that never existed in the material world, constructed to guide moral and spiritual development. Hidden truth seekers counter that these visions are the cultural overlays of something much older. Real encounters with a kingdom that revealed itself only rarely, and perhaps only to those it chose. The symbolic gardens and immortals are embellishments laid over the bedrock memory of a place that stood apart from the known world in ways neither ancient sailor nor modern researchers fully understand. If the Celtic and Norse traditions offer us the island from the windswept west and frozen north, the Chinese and Japanese give us its face in the sunrise, lit in soft light, fragrant and tantalizingly near, yet always just beyond reach. And somewhere between these two visions, between the black cliffs of the Atlantic and the jeweled palaces of the Pacific, the kingdom's true image might lie, waiting to be pieced together. In the open expanse of the southern seas, where the sky is a vault of dazzling stars and the horizon curves without interruption, the Polynesian navigators carried the memory of a place called Hawaiki. For them it was more than a myth, it was an origin, the point from which all journeys began and to which all spirits returned. In chants passed from master navigator to apprentice, Hawaiki is described as a fertile island, rich in food, water, and shelter, surrounded by waters that shift from turquoise to deep indigo in a matter of strokes. It lies beyond the chain of known islands, far across an ocean so vast that to reach it requires not just skill but an alignment of stars, winds, and tides that might come only once in a generation. To the anthropologist, Hawaiki is often explained as a metaphorical homeland, the cultural memory of the first great migration across the Pacific, recast as a perfect ancestral land. But when the oral accounts are stripped down to navigational language, they reveal patterns that refuse to sit neatly inside allegory. The Polynesian star compasses, intricate mental maps of celestial positions, name specific alignments that guide sailors toward Hawaii's direction. The chants speak of sailing under the red moon, a phenomenon that appears only during certain lunar eclipses, and of steering by the rising of the same constellations that the Celts and Norse marked as signs of approach to their own unreachable isles. Even more intriguing are the environmental markers, the scent of flowers carried far out to sea, the sudden absence of seabirds as one nears the island, and a peculiar stillness in the water as though the ocean's pulse pauses. These same sensations, recorded by a Greek mariner in the west, a Tang dynasty envoy in the east, and fishermen from Japan, appear here in an entirely different ocean, among people who had no contact with those other worlds. The Polynesian navigators, however, do not describe the island as a place that rejects visitors outright. Instead, it is said to vanish only when approached by those unready, slipping below the horizon in a shimmer of heat and light, leaving behind only empty water. Modern scholars point to well-known optical illusions at sea, Fata Morgana mirages caused by temperature inversions, as a likely explanation for such vanishing acts. And indeed, in the shimmering heat above the ocean, distant land can appear, distort, or disappear entirely in minutes. But the navigators' precision complicates this tidy dismissal. They describe Hawaii's position not as a vague direction, but in relation to fixed points in the sky and seasonal swells in the sea. They speak of its approach in days' worth of sail, of its harbors, and even of its inland mountains, said to catch the first light of dawn before the ocean's horizon is fully lit. These are the words of people who at some point may have seen the island with their own eyes. Some researchers have proposed that Hawaii was once a real island, perhaps part of a now submerged volcanic ridge that extends deep into the Pacific. Sea amounts in the region show signs of having been above sea level within the last 2,000 years, and the idea that one such peak might have been inhabited, or at least visited by Polynesian voyagers, is not far-fetched. The difficulty lies in reconciling its position with the other global myths. The Atlantic and Pacific are not neighbors. The same island could not logically exist in both oceans, unless, as some hidden history theorists propose, the island is not fixed in place at all. In this more radical vision, the kingdom exists outside of ordinary geography, appearing in different seas at different times. Its sightings are like rare astronomical events, predictable only to those who know the deeper rhythms of the world and invisible to everyone else. This idea is impossible to prove, yet it offers an explanation for the uncanny overlap in details across cultures. The Polynesian accounts, rich with astronomical navigation and deep-sea knowledge, could be a record of the same place, glimpsed in the far north by Norse sailors or in the east by Chinese envoys, just in another era and ocean. For the Polynesians, Hawaii is not a lost paradise to be mourned, but a continuing presence in the world, even if unreachable. In the oral traditions there are stories of navigators who set out not to return to their home islands, but to sail into Hawaii forever, a journey from which there is no coming back. These are not tales of death, but of joining the ancestors, becoming part of the island's eternal life. Such a perspective shifts the frame entirely. Perhaps the island is not lost at all, but deliberately hidden, a sanctuary that chooses its visitors. In recent decades, revivals of traditional wayfinding, sailing without instruments, guided only by the stars, swells and wind, have rekindled interest in Hawaii as more than a metaphor. Crews on replica double-hulled canoes have retraced ancient routes, sometimes encountering strange phenomena eerily similar to the old chants, sudden magnetic anomalies, temperature shifts and clouds forming in isolated stationary patterns far out to sea. While no one has returned with photographs of black cliffs and gleaming fortresses, these anomalies remain tantalizing hints that the ocean still holds secrets beyond the range of satellite surveys. Here, the contrast between known history and hidden truth deepens. Academic consensus sees Hawaii as a poetic construct, a cultural anchor for a people whose lives are shaped by the sea. Hidden truth seekers, however, see it as one more shard in a shattered mirror, reflecting a single reality from a dozen angles. Each shard, whether it is called Tir Nanug, Tula, Penglai, Harai or Hawaii, matches in its most essential features. The navigator's chants become not just songs of heritage, but encrypted maps to a place that may be as real as the islands under our feet, if only we knew how to find it. The question remains, if Hawaii and the other mythical islands are fragments of the same truth, where is the whole? And if the kingdom can be reached only under certain skies, by certain currents, and in certain times, what does that say about its nature? Is it a place moving through the world as the stars do, bound to cycles we have long since forgotten, or is it we who are moving, circling endlessly around a fixed point we no longer know how to see? The Polynesian navigators might smile at such speculation. For them the answer has always been simple: the island is there, waiting, and will show itself when the world is ready. Off the southeastern coast of Africa, where the Mozambique Channel stretches wide between the continent and Madagascar, the currents run strong and deep, pulling ships north and south with a steady, unseen force. For the sailors of Madagascar, descendants of both African Bantu navigators and Austronesian voyagers from across the Indian Ocean, the sea is not a barrier, but a bridge, a place of constant movement. In their oldest legends there is talk of an island far beyond the horizon, a place where the water runs clear as polished glass, and the sand is as white as crushed shells. They call it Nosy Ambaroa. In some villages, the island that answers for it is said to respond to those who call its name with the right heart. This island is not mapped on any chart yet. Its features are described with the precision of an eyewitness: rivers winding through groves of cinnamon trees, hills heavy with the scent of clove, and a bay so calm it reflects the stars without a single ripple. The oral histories say the island lies in the direction where the moon rises, fat and low over the sea, a reference that has puzzled scholars who try to translate it into compass bearings. Sailors claim it can be reached in a week's voyage under favorable winds, though none alive today admits to having made the journey. In the accepted narrative of African maritime history, Madagascar's position in the Indian Ocean made it a hub of trade between Africa, Arabia, and Asia. The Swahili coast merchants, Arab dhow captains, and later Portuguese explorers all crossed these waters, yet none of their maps show Nosy Ambaroa. Academic consensus holds that such islands are purely symbolic, a way for coastal cultures to speak of an afterlife, an ancestral homeland, or an unreachable ideal. But when one listens to the Malagasy elders recount their tales, the descriptions begin to echo stories told far away in other languages across other oceans. The people of Comoros speak of a similar place called simply the Land of Dawn, said to rise from the sea only when approached by a ship without iron nails. In the Swahili traditions of the East African coast, there are accounts of Zingibar, a jeweled island ruled by a queen who can summon winds, and in the Austronesian epics of Indonesia and the Philippines, the same cultural roots that helped populate Madagascar, there are tales of an island that moves, appearing in one place for a time before vanishing to another part of the world. Each of these shares not only broad strokes but also uncanny specifics: a deep natural harbor facing east, a central mountain, always shrouded in mist, and a quality of light that makes the whole place seem lit from within. The convergence is too exact for some researchers to dismiss as coincidence. A few historians point to the Chagos archipelago and the submerged banks of the Mascarene Plateau zoological features that could once have been higher above sea level than they are today. If one of these now lost islands existed in the right place during the height of ancient Indian Ocean trade, it could have served as a meeting point for sailors from 3 continents, a place rich enough in resources to inspire generations of stories. Rising sea levels combined with seismic shifts might have swallowed it, leaving only memory behind. And yet the legends resist being confined to geology alone. The Malagasy stories speak of Nosy Ambaroa as an island that chooses who may find it. There are instructions woven into the chants rituals to be performed before setting sail, offerings of rice and rum poured into the sea, and prohibitions against speaking certain words during the voyage. Breaking these rules, they say, will cause the island to sink beneath the waves before you reach it. Such details blur the line between navigational knowledge and sacred law, between map and magic. Here lies the tension between known history and hidden truth. The documented history tells us about tangible trade routes, known ports, and confirmed islands. But the hidden history whispers of places that may have stood outside the everyday world, accessible only to those who knew, not just where to look, but when and how. It is a pattern we have seen before in the Norse sagas of Vinland, in the Celtic voyages to Tir na Nog, in the Polynesian Way, finding to Hawaii, and now in the Indian Ocean. The same motif emerges again, an island luminous and remote, always at the edge of the possible. Modern attempts to locate Nosy Ambaroa have been surprisingly earnest. In the late 19th century a French colonial survey ship reported seeing a small heavily forested island in the middle of otherwise open sea, in a position that did not match any known landmass. When they tried to approach, a sudden squall forced them back, and by the time it cleared, the island was gone. In 1978, a Soviet oceanographic vessel claimed to detect a mass rising from the seafloor in an area of the Mozambique Channel, known for strange currents, only for subsequent sonar scans to show nothing there. And in the early 2000s, a Malagasy fishing crew described accidentally sailing into waters that felt thicker than normal, where the horizon wavered as if under heat haze, and catching sight of what they swore was a beach glowing faintly in the moonlight. Each of these accounts, whether one chooses to believe them or not, keeps the possibility alive. The skeptics argue for mirages, illusions caused by refraction over long distances or misidentifications of drifting vegetation mats, but believers point to the recurring specifics: the light, the bay, the mountain, the stillness. Too many stories, they say, for it all to be error. What makes Nosy Ambaroa especially compelling in the broader puzzle of the island kingdom is the cultural blending at its heart. Madagascar itself is a fusion of African and Austronesian heritage, and its legends reflect both lineages. In this sense, Nosy Ambaroa stands as a bridge between worlds, not just geographically, but mythologically. It is both the ancestral homeland of seafarers from the east and a promised refuge for African mariners from the west. If the island kingdom exists, this may be one of its many faces wearing different names as it greets travelers from different horizons. In the end, the legend remains unbroken because it serves more than one purpose: a navigational riddle, a cultural anchor, a spiritual ideal, and perhaps, just perhaps, a fragment of a very real place that once stood above the waters. The elders of the Malagasy coast say that if the island wants you, it will find you. This simple inversion of expectation, making the seeker the sought, captures something profound about all the myths we have followed so far. Maybe the island kingdom is not hidden from us at all. Maybe we are hidden from it. Across the Arabian Sea, along the coasts of Oman, Yemen, and southern Iran, the waters are threaded with trade routes as old as civilization itself. The Persian Gulf, long a hub for merchants, sailors, and explorers, gives rise to tales of islands shrouded in mist and mystery lands, where immortality and wealth are promised to those bold enough to seek them. Among these stories, one stands out: the island of Dar al-Ajab, House of Wonders, described in Persian and Arab manuscripts as a place of towering fortifications, gardens bursting with exotic fruits, and waters so clear they reflect the sky like polished glass. The tales are usually dismissed as allegory or exaggeration by historians who emphasize trade networks, political alliances, and cultural flourishing over fantastical islands, but when one listens closely to the descriptions, the patterns echo the myths we have traced across the globe. Dar al-Ajab is said to lie far beyond the known limits of Arab navigation, beyond the reach of the monsoon winds that govern the region. Sailors purportedly reached it, described cliffs blacker than onyx walls carved with intricate reliefs, and a harbor that shimmers in hues of copper and bronze. These details mirror the Greek mariner early account, the Norse sagas, and even the distant Polynesian way-finding chants. The more striking aspect is the island's selective accessibility. The manuscripts describe winds that shift inexplicably to prevent approach currents that repel ships, in a phenomenon wherein only certain captains, those deemed worthy or chosen by the stars, can find a safe harbor. In classical Persian literature, such as the writings of Alidri and later manuscripts preserved in libraries of Shiraz and Isfahan, Dar al-Ajab is treated both as a moral allegory and a factual account. Alidri's describes it as a source of fruit and wisdom beyond imagining, emphasizing its abundance, while simultaneously providing navigational notes that suggest it could exist somewhere in the open sea. The language blurs the line between fact and legend. Scholars in the modern era argue that these islands are conceptual spaces, places to teach ethics, reinforce leadership qualities, or test human curiosity. Yet the navigational precision embedded in the descriptions resists easy dismissal. Bearings, durations of sail signs in the sky, and even references to ocean currents appear alongside the fantastical elements, creating a hybrid record that is neither wholly symbolic nor purely empirical. Arab merchants traveling between the Persian Gulf, the Indian subcontinent, and East Africa recorded hints of a distant island in their private diaries and shiplogs. A few mention a sighting of a land with towers of black stone approached only to vanish before they could anchor. These accounts, though sparse, share uncanny details with those of the Greeks, the Norse, the Chinese, the Japanese, and the Malagasy. The same motifs recur: sheer cliffs, fortified walls, impossible, light and selective, accessibility for skeptics. These are likely embellishments inspired by tales already circulating among seafarers. For those tracing the hidden thread, they are pieces of a single fractured puzzle that spans oceans and centuries. One particularly intriguing narrative comes from the Persian traveler Ibn Fadlan, who journeyed along the Arabian Sea in the early 10th century. He writes of a small contingent of sailors who saw an island where the cliffs rose like black obelisks, and the waters gleamed as if molten metal had been poured over them. The men attempted to land but were forced back by sudden winds, which he calls spirits of the sea that guard the land. Ibn Fadlan does not claim to verify the island's existence, but he records the testimony of eyewitnesses with meticulous care, preserving it alongside other trade and diplomatic observations. This persistence across cultures raises questions impossible to resolve with conventional historical methodology. The island kingdom emerges in a dozen myths spanning the North Atlantic, the Mediterranean, the Pacific, and now the Indian Ocean. Each culture names it differently, frames it within its own cosmology, and yet preserves a core set of features that recur consistently: cliffs of black stone, towering fortifications, unusual light, selective accessibility, and association with longevity or immortality. The known history textbooks, maps, and archaeological surveys cannot account for a physical island with these features appearing in such disparate locations. The hidden truth tantalizingly suggests the possibility of a single entity perceived differently by each culture, or a phenomenon that transcends ordinary geography. The Arabian Sea and Persian Gulf accounts also introduce an element less visible in other traditions: trade and exchange. Merchants reported finding rare spices, herbs, and metals washed up on shores near where Dar al-Ajaib was said to lie. Some accounts speak of coral so bright it seemed to glow at night, and of plants unknown to any contemporary botanical knowledge. These details provide a practical frame that contrasts with the fantastical. If an island had been visited, its abundance of resources could explain why so many myths converge on the same motifs of wealth, nourishment, and paradise. Unlike purely allegorical myths, these elements suggest empirical observation, however, filtered through cultural imagination. Contrast between the known and the hidden becomes most evident in the treatment of accessibility. Historical navigation teaches that monsoons, currents, and storms govern travel in the region. These physical realities are well documented and predictable. Yet the legends describe forces that override known maritime laws: winds that reverse without warning, waves that push away approaching vessels, and even weather phenomena seemingly tied to the moral worthiness of the sailor. From a historical perspective, these are exaggerations. From the perspective of hidden truth, they are encoded instructions. The island is there, but only under conditions humans may not yet understand, a principle echoed in Polynesian Hawaii, Celtic Tir na Nug, and Malagasy Nosi Ambiroa. Another striking parallel is the idea of timing and cycles in Persian and Arab tales. Dar el-Lajib appears only during certain lunar phases or when specific stars align. The Celts and Norse mark certain constellations. The Polynesians guide themselves by the rising of fixed stars, and the Malagasy watch the moon and tides. Across cultures, the timing is crucial, reinforcing the pattern of selective visibility and suggesting a hidden rhythm connecting all these sightings. The known history can catalog calendar and lunar cycles, but the hidden truth hints at an island that exists in a temporal as well as a spatial sense, revealing itself only when conditions converge. Finally, Dar el-Lajib introduces the element of guardianship. Persian myths speak of invisible protectors, spirits, jinn, or divine forces that defend the island against unworthy intruders. Similarly, Norse Tula has hostile winds. Celtic Tir na Nog rejects the unready. Polynesian Hawaii vanishes before the unprepared, and Malagasy Nosy Ambiroa responds only to proper offerings across oceans and millennia. The island kingdom is consistently framed, not as conquered but as selective, a force that interacts with human intention, reinforcing its enigmatic nature. In tracing Dar el-Lajib through Arabian and Persian texts, we see the island kingdom taking shape as a global phenomenon. It is a place that refuses singular definition, appearing in the north, west, east, and south, shaped by wind, light, stars, and human readiness. The known history, maritime records, geological surveys, and trade routes provides context, but not closure. The hidden truth emerges in patterns, repeating architectural motifs, atmospheric effects, celestial cues, moral tests, and references to longevity or paradise. Alone, each account might be dismissed. Together, they suggest a coherent though elusive reality. Along the Mediterranean coasts of North Africa, Sicily, and the Greek Isles, sailors and merchants have for millennia passed stories of distant lands that appear briefly and vanish without warning. Among these, one tale stands out: the island of Antillia, sometimes called the Isle of Seven Cities, said to float somewhere in the western Mediterranean or beyond the Atlantic's edge. Its legend was recorded by mapmakers, chroniclers, and seafarers during the Middle Ages, appearing on portolan charts long before the Age of Discovery, like Dar el-Lajib in the Arabian Sea. Antillia is framed as a land of marvels, fortified cities, fertile plains, endless resources, and a mysterious resistance to casual intrusion. Historians generally classify it as a myth, a tale born of exploration fever and the blending of old sailor stories. Yet, when placed alongside myths from the Norse, Celtic, Chinese, Polynesian, and Indian Ocean traditions, Antillia's details begin to resonate in ways that defy simple explanation. Antillia is consistently described as a fortress island, with walls rising directly from the sea, black or dark stone, reflecting the sunlight in a way that makes the fortifications appear alive. Accounts note natural harbors that only open under precise conditions, and the islands themselves are subject to unusual tides, currents, and fogs. These features echo what we have already encountered in Tir na Nog, Thule, Penglai, Hawaii, Nosy Ambiroa, and Dar el-Lajib. The known history attributes these features to the human imagination, warning of phantom islands that inspired cartographers to fill gaps in maps with conjectural land. But the hidden truth points to a pattern of repeatable observations, similar atmospheric anomalies, consistent architectural motifs, and recurring celestial references, suggesting a phenomenon recognized globally, even if never fully understood. Medieval Portuguese and Spanish sailors spoke of Antillia as a land whose cities were abandoned by their founders. In some versions, the seven cities were populated by Christians fleeing invaders. In others, the cities were mystical home to beings beyond human comprehension. The island's disappearance from charts over time coincided with more precise navigation, leading scholars to conclude that Antillia never existed. Yet, early sightings recorded with surprising precision describe cliffs, towers and fortified walls that cannot be dismissed as mere allegory. Like the accounts from the Arabian Sea, the Mediterranean legends often include phenomena that defy ordinary explanations: sudden calms in stormy waters, walls appearing to shimmer or vanish depending on the observer's angle, and winds that change without warning. Greek sources, too, add a layer of complexity: Hesiodic fragments and later commentary reference an island of eternal light and abundant harvests in the far west beyond the Pillars of Hercules. In these myths, the land is impossible to reach by ordinary sailors, protected by divine forces or natural phenomena. Imagery resonates with the Norse Thule and Celtic Tir na Nog, suggesting a deep continuity in the perception of this island kingdom, stretching from the far north to the Mediterranean. The similarities extend beyond physical description in all versions. Only the worthy or prepared can approach, and the island's location is mutable, appearing in one generation and vanishing in another. Trade along the North African coast provides another piece of the puzzle. Berber and Arab merchants carried tales of islands with wealth beyond imagination, navigable only at specific times of year or under precise wind conditions. These merchants often added pragmatic details to the legend's: directions to approach safely, foods to carry, rituals to appease the spirits of the sea. The inclusion of these practical elements indicates that the stories were grounded in the lived experience of the sailor, not purely an moral allegory. The known history emphasizing commerce routes and mapping documents the voyages, but often ignores the unquantifiable experiences: the atmospheric phenomena, sudden calm seas, and visual distortions that recur in accounts worldwide. Here the contrast between known history and hidden truth is striking. Recorded maps and documents tell a story of exploration, colonization, and cartographic development. The island kingdom, in contrast, resists such codification. It moves, conceals itself, and chooses its observer. Its repeated appearance in myths across the globe, from Tir na Nog in Ireland to Pantilia in the Mediterranean, suggests an enduring presence, whether physical, metaphysical, or both. Known history explains human desire, political need, and cultural imagination. Hidden truth suggests a pattern that human observation has traced repeatedly, even if interpretation has been obscured by centuries of orthodoxy. Another fascinating aspect is the consistency of celestial markers. In both Mediterranean and North African versions, the island's appearance coincides with the rising of specific constellations, or the phase of the moon. Sailors are instructed to align their course with the stars, and some manuscripts describe the stars themselves as a form of guardianship, signaling whether the approach is possible or forbidden. This celestial navigation resonates with the Polynesian wayfinding to Hawaii, the Japanese guidance to Hawaii, and the Chinese voyages to Penglai. Across hemispheres and cultures, the same principle emerges. The island kingdom exists not only in space, but in time and observation, revealing itself to those who align with its hidden rhythms. The persistence of such motifs from the Norse fjords to the Mediterranean challenges the assumption that these are isolated myths. While historians have long dismissed phantom islands as errors of early cartographers or flights of imagination, the convergence of details across continents suggests a hidden network of knowledge. The island kingdom is consistently described as fortified, luminous, selective, and tied to natural and celestial phenomena, patterns that point to an underlying reality or experiential truth that defies simple classification. Even today, the island kingdom exerts its pull on sailors, historians, and adventurers. Modern attempts to locate Antilia or its equivalents have yielded intriguing but inconclusive results: unidentified landforms, unusual magnetic anomalies, and optical illusions in the sea. While mainstream science attributes these to natural phenomena, the repeated alignment of features, timing, and atmospheric effects across cultures keeps the possibility open that a real, if elusive, island Inspired the myths known history can catalog these anomalies as curiosities. Hidden Truth frames them as echoes of a larger globally recognized phenomena. In tracing the Mediterranean and North African traditions, we see the island kingdom as a bridge linking worlds, a land appearing in the Atlantic, the Pacific, the Indian Ocean, and the Mediterranean, consistently described as both unreachable and intimately connected to human experience. It is a testament to the enduring power of observation, memory, and storytelling, bridging cultures separated by geography, yet united in their recognition of a remarkable place. Each culture, while shaping its own narrative, preserved elements that, when considered together, suggest a global pattern, an island that is real in ways that transcend maps, laws of navigation, or human expectation. Across the Caribbean and the region of the Greater Antilles, and the Yucatan, sailors, explorers, and indigenous peoples have long spoken of islands that appear and vanish with almost supernatural precision. Among these, one island emerges repeatedly, Bimini, a place described as a paradise of white sands, crystal clear waters, and extraordinary flora. Early Spanish explorers, including the crews of Columbus and his contemporaries, documented reports from Taino guides about an island rich in gold, pearls, and unusual stones. Scholars have largely interpreted these accounts as exaggerations or wishful thinking, a combination of rumor and European imagination. Yet when the indigenous oral histories are considered alongside these European logs, a pattern emerges that resonates with myths from Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Pacific. An island that is fortified, luminous, selectively accessible, and tied to celestial and environmental cues. The Taino describe Bimini not simply as a place to inhabit, but as a sacred island, a point of connection between the earthly and spiritual worlds. Its approach is governed by stars and currents, and it is said to vanish or hide itself from those who are unprepared or disrespectful. These details echo the Polynesian Hawaiki, the Celtic Tir na Nog, and the Japanese Horai. Like their counterparts in the North Atlantic, the Mediterranean, and the Indian Ocean, the Caribbean island is selective, revealing itself only to those who align with its hidden rhythms. Its description emphasizes natural feature, white limestone cliffs, groves of fruit-bearing trees, and beaches that glimmer with light that seems unnatural, and human features, such as settlements or ceremonial structures, which appear briefly in explorers' accounts. Columbus' journals include several references to Bimini and other islands along the imagined route to the Indies. He writes of seas unusually calm, reflections in the water that defied expectation, and an island that seemed to recede whenever approached directly. These observations, once dismissed as the fog of imagination or the exaggeration of explorers, align uncannily with accounts from Chinese envoys, Polynesian navigators, and Arabian sailors. Known history frames Columbus' reports as errors born of miscalculation and wishful thinking, but Hidden Truth presents them as echoes of a persistent global pattern, the island kingdom, appearing in multiple oceans, cultures, and centuries, yet always remaining just beyond the grasp of ordinary observation. Mesoamerican traditions provide further resonance. The Maya, with their sophisticated astronomical knowledge, spoke of islands in the western seas that were fertile, luminous, and imbued with sacred qualities. These islands, sometimes referred to as the lands of the sun, or islands of the gods, were associated with both material and spiritual wealth. The alignment of stars, the timing of lunar cycles, and the direction of the prevailing winds were crucial in determining when the islands could be approached safely. This mirrors the recurring motif of celestial and environmental cues found in Tir na Nog, Tule Pinglai, Hawaii, Nosy Ambiroa, and Dar Alajaib. The consistency of these features across continents is striking, suggesting a pattern not of coincidence, but of observation of a singular recurring phenomenon. Interpreted through different cultural lenses, European exploration in the 15th and 16th centuries intensified interest in these islands. Spanish, Portuguese, and later English navigators mapped the Caribbean meticulously, yet Bimini and its counterparts often remained elusive or disappeared from maps altogether. These vanishings are frequently attributed to misidentification, optical illusions, or navigational difficulties of the region, but multiple independent sources, Taino oral history, Columbus logs, and later European accounts, describe similar features: cliffs of black or dark stone, gardens or groves that shimmer unnaturally, and waters with peculiar stillness or currents that repel approach. These repeated motifs suggest a hidden truth that transcends human error or imagination. The known history of Caribbean exploration emphasizes conquest, trade, and colonization. Scholars focus on the routes, the mapping, and the interactions with indigenous populations, yet these narratives largely ignore the recurring anomalies, the optical effects, the untraceable harbors, and the island's selective accessibility. Hidden truth suggests that these anomalies are not accidental, but essential features of the island kingdom's appearance. The island is not simply missed or misdescribed, it actively resists observation, revealing itself only to those aligned with its rhythms. This principle is consistent across the myths we have examined, from Norse Thule to the Indian Ocean's Dar el-Ajaib. The Caribbean islands also introduce the motif of wealth as a test or reward in European accounts. Explorers often describe the islands as abundant in gold, pearls, and other treasures. Yet these riches are usually inaccessible or fleeting. Indigenous traditions frame the abundance differently, as a resource to be respected and approached with spiritual readiness. The contrast between European expectation and indigenous, the broader contrast between known history and hidden truth. One sees the island through the lens of acquisition, the other through alignment and reverence. Across cultures, the island kingdom is both material and spiritual, offering insight to the prepared while remaining elusive to the unready. Modern attempts to locate Bimini and similar islands provide intriguing but inconclusive results. Submerged structures discovered off the coast of the Bahamas, unusual underwater currents, and magnetic anomalies have prompted speculation about lost islands or elevated seafloor features. While mainstream science attributes these findings to natural geological processes, the repetition of the island kingdom's characteristics across the Atlantic, Mediterranean, Indian Ocean, and Pacific Oceans challenges the idea that they are purely coincidental. The hidden truth perspective proposes that the islands may exist in a manner not fully captured by modern maps or instruments, appearing in cycles, moving with oceanic currents, or manifesting selectively according to unseen laws. The Caribbean thread further reinforces a critical insight: the island kingdom is a global phenomenon. Its appearance is shaped by environment, culture, and observation, yet certain core characteristics persist: fortified or cliffed landscapes, luminous and unusual qualities of light, selective accessibility, and links to abundance or immortality. The known history, logs, maps, and historical analysis can describe human attempts to reach these places, but it cannot fully account for their consistent and recurring feature. Hidden truth, however, frames the island kingdom as a singular reality, refracted through the lenses of dozens of cultures over thousands of years. By connecting the Caribbean to the Mediterranean, North Africa, Indian Ocean, Asia, and the Pacific, we begin to see a startling global pattern. The island kingdom is not confined to one region or civilization. It moves, shifts, and appears according to its own rules, interacting with humanity in ways that blend geography, astronomy, and morality. Each culture preserves fragments of observation, embedding them in myth, allegory, and ritual. Together, these fragments suggest a continuity that spans oceans, eras, and continents, challenging conventional distinctions between legend and reality. In the Caribbean, as in other regions, the island kingdom maintains its defining mystery. It is reachable only to those aligned with its hidden order, perceptible only to those attuned to its rhythms. Sailors, explorers, and indigenous guides alike recognize its selective nature. Its physical features, cliffs, fortifications, luminous waters, remain consistent, as do the environmental cues that dictate when approach is possible. Across all these traditions, the island kingdom operates according to principles that lie beyond the normal constraints of human experience, defying the assumptions of known history, while revealing a hidden truth observable across cultures and centuries. Far inland in South America, along the winding courses of the Amazon and Orinoco rivers, indigenous legends tell of islands, not of the ocean, but of the rivers themselves, hidden in plain sight within dense rainforests and shifting waterways. Among the Tucano Yanomami and other Amazonian peoples, there are stories of islands that appear and disappear, of lands where the trees shine with a light all their own, rivers run with water purer than any found elsewhere, and creatures of extraordinary size and intelligence roam freely. These islands are described as both physical and spiritual spaces, realms that interact with human consciousness and intention, offering both sustenance and insight to those who approach correctly. Scholars have often interpreted these stories as allegorical, moral instruction, or expressions of the environment's richness. But when examined alongside the global pattern of oceanic and continental myths, these inland islands fit a broader puzzle. The island kingdom is not confined to seas alone. It manifests wherever environmental, celestial, and human conditions align. The Amazonian islands are said to shift with the seasons, hidden by floods and mists, sometimes accessible for only a few weeks before vanishing again. They are described with remarkable specificity: forests dominated by towering hardwoods, flowering plants that bloom out of season, freshwater pools reflecting the sky in impossible clarity. Elders speak of islands that appear brighter at certain times of day, catching the light in ways that signal approachability or danger. Travelers must follow strict rituals, observe animal behavior, and heed signs in the water and sky to reach them safely. These details mirror the Polynesian, Mediterranean, and Caribbean myths: elective visibility, reliance on environmental cues, and spiritual readiness as prerequisites for approach. Spanish and Portuguese explorers in the 16th and 17th centuries recorded accounts of river islands along the Amazon and Orinoco, though they often dismissed indigenous reports as exaggerations or misidentifications. Yet several early maps depict islands in locations that now seem hydrologically improbable, and some descriptions match unusual geological formations and seasonal changes that can temporarily expose or obscure land. Known history treats these as curiosities, anomalies, or error, but hidden truth sees them as part of the island kingdom's adaptive nature. The kingdom is not static; it shifts between waters, oceans, and rivers, revealing itself only when conditions align. One particularly compelling story from the Yanomami describes an island whose trees are laden with golden fruits, whose rivers are filled with fish that glow at night, and whose air carries a constant gentle warmth, irrespective of the weather beyond its shore. Shamans claim that approaching the island requires absolute respect. Silence must be maintained, offerings presented at specific points along the river, and steps taken to align with the movement of the stars. Those who fail vanish, not by drowning, but by slipping into a parallel experience where the island is inaccessible. The narrative parallels Polynesian Hawaii, Celtic Tir, Dirnamum, the Persian Dar Alajab, a selective accessibility and alignment with unseen natural or metaphysical laws. Amazonian island legends also include motifs of immortality or extended life. In Tucano stories, ancestors who reach these islands do not die in the ordinary sense; they transform, becoming guardians of the land, blending physical presence with spiritual continuity. This mirrors the recurring global motif of islands conferring longevity from Horai. In Japanese myth to Antillia in the Mediterranean and Nosy Ambiroa in the Indian Ocean, known history records, encounters with the natural world, but rarely captures the symbolic or metaphysical significance embedded in indigenous stories. Hidden Truth, however, integrates both. The island kingdom is a locus where geography, biology, and spirituality converge, shaping the experience of those who encounter it. The island's fleeting nature also suggests a mechanism that transcends conventional geography. Seasonal floods, shifting sediments, optical illusions, and mist can hide river islands for weeks or months, creating the impression of disappearance. Yet the consistency of descriptions across generations implies that these are not merely random phenomena, but predictable features. Acknowledged by those with deep environmental knowledge, these inland islands are adaptive manifestations of the island kingdom, using natural processes to remain hidden from casual observers. Much like the ocean's selective visibility in Hawaii, Bimini, and Antillia, another striking feature of South American myths is the integration of fauna and flora as markers of accessibility. Certain birds are said to circle islands only when approach is permitted. Particular fish appear in abundance to guide navigators, and flowering plants signal entry points or boundaries. These biological cues function similarly to the environmental and celestial markers described in other regions: the rise of a specific star, the direction of a monsoon, or the shimmer of light on a cliff. Across continents, the island kingdom relies on a combination of natural and supernatural markers, embedding its presence into the world without violating the rules of physical observation. European chroniclers often attempted to rationalize these phenomena. They explained glowing fish as bioluminescence, shifting islands as river mechanics, and golden fruits as exaggerations. While these explanations hold in isolation, they fail to account for the recurring patterns seen globally, from the North Atlantic to the Pacific, from the Indian Ocean to the Amazon. Independent cultures describe islands that vanish and reappear, guarded by environmental, celestial, and moral forces. Known history explains the components. Hidden Truth suggests an underlying order that connects them. The inland islands also highlight the island kingdom's adaptability. Unlike oceanic islands, which are constrained by tides and currents, river islands can exploit seasonal flooding, sedimentation, and optical effects to appear and disappear. This adaptability reinforces the kingdom's elusiveness and its consistent motif of selective excess. While the known history framework emphasizes navigational skill and exploration, Hidden Truth frames the islands as active participants in their own concealment, existing in a liminal space where human perception intersects with environmental cycles. By situating the island kingdom inland, South American myths expand the geographical and conceptual scope of the phenomenon. The kingdom is no longer restricted to oceans. It manifests wherever natural, celestial, and human factors converge. Each region, whether the Pacific, Indian Ocean, Mediterranean, Caribbean, or Amazon, adds unique elements to the larger pattern, while preserving core characteristics: selective accessibility, unusual light or visual phenomena, abundance or wealth, and spiritual significance. Across time and space, these traits define the island kingdom, revealing a hidden truth that transcends local culture and conventional mapping. In conclusion, the inland islands of South America demonstrate that the island kingdom is a global phenomenon with both physical and metaphysical dimensions. Known history frames them as myths, navigational errors, or natural anomalies. Hidden Truth recognizes them as part of a consistent worldwide pattern of lands that appear under precise conditions, engage with human perception and morality, and provide extraordinary experiences to those attuned to their rhythms. From the Amazon to the Orinoco, from the Caribbean to the Mediterranean, Indian Ocean, and Pacific, the island kingdom emerges as a coherent yet elusive reality, uniting disparate myths into a single astonishing narrative of human observation and natural mystery. Far to the north, along the coasts of North America, and within its vast inland waters, indigenous legends preserve stories of islands and lands that appear and disappear, often linked to spiritual or cosmological significance. Among the Haida, Tlingit, and other Pacific Northwest peoples, there are accounts of islands shrouded in mist, visible only at certain times of day, or when approached with proper ceremonial observances. These islands are described as luminous, fortified by natural cliffs, and home to extraordinary creatures or sacred energies. European explorers often dismissed these accounts as superstition, recording them as mythical or imaginary islands in logs and journals. Yet when considered alongside the myths of the Caribbean, South America, the Mediterranean, Africa, the Indian Ocean, and the Pacific, a remarkable continuity emerges. The island kingdom is consistently described across continents, yet remains elusive and selectively accessible. The Pacific Northwest Islands share striking physical characteristics with those seen elsewhere: cliffs of black or dark stone, water that shimmer or remain inexplicably calm, and dense forests that emit an almost otherworldly glow are recurring motifs. These islands are not simply geographic features, but operate within a moral and spiritual framework only the worthy may approach, and approaching improperly invites disorientation, storms, or disappearance. Known history explains these phenomena as fog, tidal effects, or optical illusions. Hidden truth, however, suggests a consistent set of environmental and perceptual markers across cultures, implying a global principle guiding the island kingdom's manifestation. Among the Haida, some islands are said to contain houses of the ancestors elevated on cliffs and accessible only by understanding secret pathways through the water. The Tlingit speak of islands that vanish into mist when approached incorrectly, only to reappear once proper protocols or observations are followed. These practices parallel Polynesian rituals, Celtic instructions, and Amazonian ceremonial rites. Across the globe, the island kingdom integrates human intention, environmental cues, and celestial alignment into its accessibility, blending the physical and metaphysical in a way that defies purely historical or scientific explanation. Early European explorers, including Spanish, French, and British navigators of the 16th and 17th centuries, recorded encounters with these islands, though often couched in doubt or disbelief. One British captain noted a mysterious isle whose cliffs reflected the sun like polished metal, only to find it vanished the following day. Another chronicler described a luminous forest at the water's edge with birds guiding the way, which disappeared when he attempted to land. Known history frames these accounts as exaggeration or misperception. Hidden truth reveals a persistent pattern. Islands appear in response to observation, ceremonial conduct, and environmental conditions, reinforcing the island kingdom's selective nature. The North American inland water systems, including the Great Lakes, hold similar accounts. The Ojibwe and other Great Lakes tribes recount islands that appear only at certain seasons or lunar phases. These lands, often described as paradisiacal, emit light and warmth distinct from surrounding areas and contain resources or knowledge not found elsewhere. Europeans attempting to map these features recorded them as ephemeral, while indigenous communities embedded their observations into ritual astronomy and oral history. The recurring motifs of illumination, selective visibility, and spiritual significance mirror those from the Caribbean, South America, the Mediterranean, Africa, and the Indian Ocean. Environmental cues play a central role. Pacific Northwest legends emphasize the behavior of tides, the appearance of specific bird species, and the position of stars as indicators of when islands are approachable. Great Lakes legends similarly note fog, wind direction, and seasonal water levels as markers of accessibility. Across continents, these environmental indicators act as guides, suggesting that the island kingdom operates according to consistent natural and perhaps metaphysical principles. Known history can document the occurrence of fog tides or bird migrations, but hidden truth interprets these as part of the island kingdom's pattern of selective manifestation. A recurring element across North American traditions is the interplay of wealth and knowledge. Islands are often described as containing treasured sacred knowledge or transformative experiences for those who reach them. In Haida accounts, approaching the island with humility grants visions of ancestors and understanding of natural cycles. Among Great Lakes tribes, successfully navigating to hidden islands confers mastery of environmental knowledge, storytelling authority, or spiritual insight. These motifs echo the riches of Antillia in the Mediterranean, the golden fruits of the Amazon, and the abundance of Bimini in the Caribbean. Across cultures, the island kingdom rewards alignment with its hidden laws rather than mere desire or effort. The North American thread also emphasizes the ephemeral nature of the island kingdom. Like its counterparts in the Caribbean, Indian Ocean, and Pacific, these islands are mutable, appearing in one generation, disappearing in the next, shifting with seasons, tides, or celestial alignments. Europeans often dismissed this as optical illusion or cartographic error. Hidden Truth, however, interprets these observations as a defining principle. The island kingdom exists in a liminal space accessible only under specific conditions and operating according to a logic that blends environmental reality with cultural perception. Another feature is the role of ceremony and moral conduct. In the Pacific Northwest, approaching islands without proper respect or knowledge is said to result in storms, disorientation, or disappearance. Great Lakes traditions echo this principle, instructing travelers to observe rituals or follow prescribed paths. These patterns mirror Polynesian Hawaii, Japanese Horai, Celtic Tir, Nanog, Persian Dar Alajaib, Malagasy, Nosy Ambirawa, and Amazonian river islands across the globe. The island kingdom enforces selective access, reinforcing a hidden truth that intertwines human intention with environmental and celestial markers. North American myths also contribute unique symbolic layers. Islands are often described as liminal spaces between worlds, places where the physical and spiritual intersect, where humans may gain insight into ancestral knowledge or cosmic order. This symbolic dimension complements the material motifs of cliffs, luminous light, and natural abundance, reinforcing the island kingdom's dual nature as both physical and metaphysical. Known history records environmental phenomena, but rarely captures these layered interpretations. Hidden Truth integrates both. The island kingdom is real in its effects, even when its form eludes standard measurement or mapping. The convergence of North American legends with those of the Caribbean, South America, Mediterranean, Indian Ocean, and Pacific reinforces the global continuity of the island kingdom. Despite cultural, geographic, and temporal differences, consistent features emerge: selective visibility, environmental and celestial cues, fortification or cliffs, unusual luminosity, spiritual or moral significance, and a blend of abundance and mystery. Known history provides fragmented record, explorer logs, maps, oral histories, but cannot fully reconcile them. Hidden Truth sees a coherent network, revealing an island kingdom that manifests worldwide according to principles both natural and supernatural. By tracing North American islands alongside global counterparts, it becomes clear that the island kingdom is not an isolated myth, but a phenomenon observable across continents and oceans, from Thule and Tir Nanog in the north, Antillia in the Mediterranean, Dar Alajaib in the Indian Ocean, Hawaii in the Pacific, Bimini in the Caribbean, the Amazonian river islands, and now the Pacific Northwest and Great Lakes. A consistent pattern emerges. Known history emphasizes exploration, trade, and mapping. Hidden Truth illuminates a global rhythm: islands that reveal themselves to those aligned with environmental, celestial, and moral conditions, offering abundance, insight, and transformation. In conclusion, the North American traditions confirm that the island kingdom operates on a worldwide scale, blending geography, astronomy, environment, and human perception. Known history documents human attempts to locate these lands. Hidden Truth recognizes the kingdom's underlying logic, its selective nature and its consistent manifestation across culture that from coast to coast, ocean to river, north to south, the island kingdom is a persistent, elusive reality that defies conventional classification, uniting myths, legends, and observations into a coherent pattern that spans the globe. Across East and Southeast Asia, the seas are dotted with myths of islands that shimmer between reality and imagination, places of wonder and selective visibility. In Chinese legend, Penglai is described as a fabled island, where the immortals dwell at shores lined with palaces of jade, towers of gold, gardens whose fruits confer eternal life. Japanese myth speaks of Horai, a land of similar luminosity and abundance reachable only by the virtuous or the chosen. Southeast Asian maritime cultures, from the Malay archipelago to the Philippines, also recount islands that appear briefly, vanish under mists, and reveal themselves only under specific celestial or environmental conditions. Known history treats these accounts as symbolic or allegorical, while hidden truth identifies a global pattern: islands that share characteristics, behavior, and selective accessibility across cultures separated by thousands of miles. Penglai, according to Taoist texts, sits somewhere in the eastern sea, shrouded in clouds and fog, visible only when the observer's spirit aligns with its hidden rhythm. It is described with extraordinary detail: cliffs of black stone, waters that reflect the sky like polished mirrors, groves of rare trees, and palaces that emit an ethereal glow. Sailors attempting to reach it often encounter sudden storms, disorienting winds, or optical illusions that make the island vanish. These descriptions echo Persian Dar al-Ajib, Celtic Tir Tirnanug, Polynesian Hawaii, and Caribbean Bimini. The known history framework explains these as exaggerations, optical illusions, or moral allegories. But hidden truth suggests the repeated motifs indicate a coherent phenomenon observed across oceans, cultures, and centuries. Japanese Horai shares similar features. It is a paradise of abundance and light, where immortality is possible for those who approach with respect and knowledge. Horai is often visible only under certain conditions, specific times of day, the alignment of stars, or ceremonial readiness. Explorers attempting to land often find the island obscured by mist or unreachable by sea currents that seem to shift without reason, like Penglai. Horai emphasizes selective accessibility, echoing North American, South American, Mediterranean, and Indian Ocean myths. Known history records the island as a moral allegory, while hidden truth interprets the repeated environmental cues as part of a broader global pattern. Maritime Southeast Asia adds further complexity. The Malays, Javanese, and Tagalog peoples recount islands that rise from the sea, briefly adorned with unusual flora and fauna, and often inhabited by spirits or semi-divine beings. These islands are not permanent, they appear and disappear. According to environmental cycles, tides, and celestial alignment, travelers must follow prescribed rituals and observe natural signs to approach safely. These practices mirror Polynesian wayfinding, Amazonian ceremonial rites, and North American indigenous protocols. Across cultures, the island kingdom enforces its own rules, blending physical, spiritual, and moral dimensions into one coherent system of selective manifestation. Early Chinese and Japanese texts describe voyages toward these islands with remarkable precision. Navigational instructions, celestial observations, and seasonal markers are detailed alongside fantastical elements. Chroniclers often treat them as allegorical lessons about virtue, patience, or cosmic orders. Yet the persistence of environmental and astronomical markers across generations, combined with repeated descriptions of luminous cliffs, fortified structures, and selective access, hints at something more than mere allegory. The island kingdom in its Asian manifestations continues the global pattern observed from Europe, Africa, the Americas, and Oceania. Known history explains the phenomena in rational terms: fog optical distortion, tidal currents, or exaggeration. Hidden Truth, however, observes the consistency of these features across continents, environmental markers, celestial alignment, selective accessibility, luminous landscapes, abundance, and spiritual significance. From the Indian Ocean's Dar al-Ajib to the Mediterranean's Antillia Caribbean, Bimini, Amazonian, river islands, North American inland and coastal islands, and now East and Southeast Asian mythical islands, a global pattern emerges. The island kingdom is not confined to one ocean or region. It is a phenomenon that manifests wherever conditions permit, observable yet elusive, material, yet transcendent. Celestial cues are central to East Asian islands. Taoist texts describe specific constellations, signaling when Penglai is approachable. Japanese texts describe lunar cycles dictating Horai's visibility. Southeast Asian accounts mention tides, seasonal monsoons, and the behavior of certain animals as markers. These natural and celestial signals function as guides, ensuring that only prepared observers encounter the islands. Known history can catalog tides and constellations, but Hidden Truth interprets these as integral components of the island kingdom's manifestation. Across cultures, the islands interact with human observation, revealing themselves selectively in a complex interplay of natural and metaphysical laws. The Asian islands also emphasize wealth, knowledge, and transformation as rewards for proper approach. In Penglai, the fruits grant longevity, palaces contain arcane knowledge, and visitors may attain spiritual insight. In Horai, virtue is rewarded with glimpses of immortality and enlightenment. Southeast Asian islands emphasize harmony with natures and spiritual readiness as prerequisites for access. Across cultures, these islands are not simply treasures to acquire. They are experiential tests aligning with natural, celestial, and moral laws. Known history frames these as moral tales, while Hidden Truth recognizes a recurring pattern of islands conferring abundance and transformation selectively. A striking aspect of the Asian traditions is their interaction with navigation. Mariners record changing currents, deceptive waters, and sudden mists, phenomena that obscure the islands from casual observation. These physical realities mirror reports from Dar al-Ajib, Tulib, Bimini, and Amazonian islands, suggesting a universal principle of selective visibility. The island's elusiveness is a defining characteristic of the island kingdom worldwide. It is reachable but only under precise environmental, temporal, and moral conditions, ensuring that each encounter is unique and dependent on alignment with its hidden rhythm. The convergence of Asian myths with global counterparts reinforces the island kingdom's continuity. Across oceans and continents, the islands share defining traits: luminous cliffs or terrain, selective accessibility, celestial and environmental marker, spiritual or moral significance, and both material and experiential abundance. Known history describes these as allegory, misperception, or cultural myth. Hidden Truth interprets the repeated features as evidence of a coherent phenomenon, bridging continents, cultures, and centuries. From the North Atlantic to the Pacific, Indian Ocean, Caribbean, Amazon, North America, and East Asia, the island kingdom emerges as a persistent global entity, operating according to principles largely hidden from conventional observation. By mapping these Asian legends onto the broader network of global myths, it becomes evident that the island kingdom is not a series of isolated stories, but a consistent worldwide phenomenon. Characteristics: selective visibility, luminous landscapes, fortifications, spiritual significance, abundance, and alignment with environmental and celestial cues, repeat across oceans, continents, and cultures. Known history can record human encounters, cartographic attempts, and folklore, but Hidden Truth reveals a coherent pattern: islands that interact with observation, morality, and environmental conditions, manifesting a reality that is both physical and metaphysical. In conclusion, the East and Southeast Asian accounts demonstrate that the island kingdom transcends regional or cultural boundaries. Known history emphasizes allegory, exploration, and misperception. Hidden truth reveals a global pattern, a selective, luminous, abundant, and spiritually significant entity, appearing wherever environmental, celestial, and moral conditions converge. From Penglai and Horai to the Malay and Philippine Islands, the Asian thread completes a crucial part of the island kingdom's worldwide network, reinforcing its presence from Europe, Africa, the Americas, the Indian Ocean, and Oceania, in uniting these diverse myths into a coherent global phenomenon. Across the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, Polynesian, Micronesian, and Melanesian navigators have long preserved stories of islands that appear, vanish, or shift location, sometimes only visible to those with knowledge of celestial navigation and the natural rhythms of the sea. Among the Maori, the concept of Hawaiki represents both a homeland and a mystical island kingdom, a place of origin, spiritual significance, and abundance. In Micronesia, legends speak of islands rising from mists or shifting positions with the tides revealing themselves only to those who travel with knowledge of stars, currents, and ceremonial protocols. Melanesian myths add layers of interaction with spirits, unusual flora and fauna, and islands that appear luminous against the night sky. Known history frames these accounts as allegorical origin stories or exaggerations of navigational skill. Hidden truth, however, identifies these Pacific islands as a continuation of the same global pattern, the island kingdom appearing selectively in alignment with environmental, celestial, and moral factors across oceans and continents. Hawaiki and Maori, oral tradition is described with remarkable consistency: lush forests, fortified settlements, abundant food, and waters that shimmer with unusual light. Only those guided by ancestral knowledge and celestial markers can reach it, emphasizing alignment of skill, virtue, and observation. These features mirror Polynesian navigation techniques, which rely on stars, wave patterns, cloud formations, and animal behavior to locate islands that are often invisible to the untrained eye. Across the Pacific, as in the Mediterranean, Caribbean, Amazon, North America, and Asia, the island kingdom's selective visibility, abundance, and spiritual significance remain constant. Known history documents navigational skill and oral tradition. Hidden truth sees a persistent global principle shaping island appearance and access. Micronesian and Melanesian myths introduce additional complexity. Some islands are described as appearing briefly above the water, then sinking or becoming obscured by mist and fog. Others are said to drift across the ocean, shifting position with the tides and currents. The inhabitants, often semi-divine or spiritual beings, interact selectively with human observers. These islands share traits with the North Atlantic, Antillia, Caribbean, Bimini, Indian Ocean, Dar Alajaib, Amazonian river islands, and Asian Penglai and Horai, fortifications or cliffs, luminous landscapes, selective access, and moral or spiritual tests. Known history explains these phenomena as optical illusion, tidal fluctuation, or exaggeration. Hidden truth recognizes the recurring features as part of a coherent global pattern. Navigational expertise is central to Pacific Island myths. Polynesian wayfinding relies on a precise understanding of celestial markers, wave swells, and ocean currents, enabling the detection of islands that are invisible to untrained observers. In this sense, the island kingdom's selective visibility is not mystical alone. It interacts with environmental conditions that skilled navigators can interpret. Across other continents, similar principles appear: Amazonian river islands, North American coastal and inland islands, Mediterranean Antillia, and East Asian Penglai, all require alignment with environmental and celestial cues. The hidden truth is consistent islands manifest according to rules that blend observation skill and alignment with natural and metaphysical cycles. The island's abundance is another common motif. Hawaiki is described as offering food in surplus palaces, adorned with precious materials and waters filled with fish. Micronesian islands contain unique plants, animals, or resources that appear only when approached correctly. Melanesian myths often emphasize the spiritual or healing properties of the island, linking physical wealth with transformative experiences. This duality of material and spiritual abundance echoes the riches of Antillia, the golden fruits of Amazonian islands, the treasures of Bimini, and the palaces of Penglai and Horai. Known history often frames these as exaggerations or moral allegory. Hidden truth sees a pattern. The kingdom consistently provides abundance as a reward for alignment, observation, and respect. The Pacific Islands also reinforce the island kingdom's mutable nature. Rising tides, shifting sands, and temporary fog create the impression that islands appear. Sailors' accounts describe the sudden emergence or disappearance of islands depending on angle, distance, or time of day. This transience mirrors Amazonian river islands, North American inland islands, and East Asian islands, highlighting a universal principle. The island kingdom exists in a liminal space, manifesting selectively, often in response to environmental, celestial, and moral factors. Known history records human failure to locate these islands. Hidden truth interprets their selective appearance as an integral feature of the phenomenon. Spiritual and moral conduct is central in Pacific myths. Only those who navigate respectfully, observe proper rituals, and align themselves with natural rhythms are allowed access. Polynesian, Micronesian, and Melanesian islands enforce selective access through spiritual, environmental, and celestial laws. These practices mirror Amazonian ceremonial rites, North American observances, and Asian rituals across continents. The island kingdom emphasizes that observation alone is insufficient. Alignment with moral, spiritual, and environmental principles is required. Known history emphasizes human error and superstition. Hidden truth recognizes a consistent principle shaping island manifestation. Globally, the luminous quality of Pacific Islands is another recurrent feature. Hawaii's forests, cliffs, and waters are described as reflecting sunlight or moonlight, unusually creating an ethereal glow visible from a distance. Micronesian and Melanesian accounts describe similar visual phenomena. Islands that glimmer against the horizon reflect the sun or stars or shimmer in mist. These traits mirror Mediterranean, Caribbean, Amazonian, North American, and Asian descriptions. Known history attributes this to optical illusion or poetic exaggeration. Hidden truth identifies a repeated cross-cultural observation of unusual light phenomena associated with the island kingdom. From a global perspective, the Pacific Islands confirm the island kingdom as a worldwide phenomenon. Across the North Atlantic, Mediterranean, Caribbean, South America, North America, East Asia, and Oceania, the same defining characteristics emerge: luminous landscapes, fortifications or cliffs, selective accessibility, celestial and environmental markers, abundance, and spiritual or moral significance. Known history documents exploration, folklore, and failed attempts at discovery. Hidden truth interprets the pattern as a coherent network of islands appearing selectively according to environmental, celestial, and moral alignment, shaping human experience across cultures. The Pacific thread also emphasizes connectivity. Polynesian navigation and oral traditions spread knowledge across thousands of miles, linking islands, rituals, and celestial markers. This creates continuity within Oceania and mirror the broader global pattern. Islands appearing in multiple regions, cultures, and time periods with consistent traits. Known history records maritime skill and cultural transmission. Hidden truth frames the island kingdom as an entity interacting with human perception, skill, and morality, revealing itself only under precise conditions and creating a globally coherent selective network. In conclusion, the myths of Oceania, Polynesia, Melanesia reinforce the island kingdom's worldwide continuity, known history, records islands' navigation and oral tradition, often dismissing them as allegory or exaggeration. Hidden Truth sees a coherent global network of luminous, fortified, selectively accessible islands that offer abundance, spiritual insight and transformation, from Hawaii to Antillia, Dar al-Ajaib, Bimini, Amazonian river islands, North American inland and coastal islands, and East Asian Penglai and Horai. The island kingdom manifests according to principles that transcend geography, culture, and time, confirming a global phenomenon that unites myth, observation, and hidden truth across the world. Along the coasts of East Africa and across the Indian Ocean, myths of islands that appear and disappear have persisted for centuries, woven into the oral histories of Swahili traders, Malagasy peoples and sailors of the Arabian Sea. Madagascar, the Comoros, and the smaller Mascarene Islands are often associated with tales of lands that shift position, vanish under mist, or reveal themselves only at certain times of year. These islands are described as abundant in flora and fauna, unlike anywhere else, fortified by cliffs, and sometimes inhabited by semi-divine beings or spirits. Known history frames these tales as exaggerations by traders, mariners, errors, or allegorical instruction. Hidden Truth, however, observes that these descriptions mirror the patterns seen globally, from the Caribbean to South America, North America, Europe, East Asia, and Oceania, suggesting the presence of a single interconnected island kingdom. Malagasy legends speak of Noziembiroa, a luminous island that appears intermittently off the eastern coast of Madagascar. Elders describe its beaches as shining white forests, glimmering with light, and waters unusually calm, reflecting the sky in perfect clarity. Only those who navigate with knowledge of stars, tides, and seasonal currents can find it. Similar to Polynesian Hawaii, Amazonian river islands, and Caribbean Bimini, the island enforces selective visibility, granting access to those aligned with its hidden laws. Known history dismisses such descriptions as myth or navigational error. Hidden Truth recognizes the consistent features, luminosity, selective access, and spiritual significance as part of a coherent global pattern. Swahili traders recount islands in the Indian Ocean that shift position or appear only during specific monsoon cycles. These islands are often abundant in food and resources, with lush vegetation and unusual wildlife. Travelers report that improper approach can result in disorientation or disappearance, emphasizing moral and observational readiness. Such patterns are consistent with North Atlantic Antillia Mediterranean legends, East Asian Penglai, Japanese Horai, Amazonian river islands, and North American inland islands. Across continents, the island kingdoms' defining traits remain constant: abundance, selective visibility, spiritual or moral significance, and alignment with environmental and celestial markers. Arabian sailors describe Dar al-Ajaib, or Land of Wonders, as an island kingdom, rich in gold, pearls, and mysterious flora, appearing intermittently in the Indian Ocean. Approaching it requires careful observation of tides, winds, and celestial alignment. A misstep leads to its disappearance, leaving the island visible only as a fleeting reflection or glimmer in the distance. Known history frames these accounts as exaggeration or navigational error, yet Hidden Truth situates them within a global network of islands that appeal selectively, sharing characteristics across oceans, continents, and centuries. The recurring motifs of luminous landscapes, selective accessibility, fortifications, and abundance persist consistently across cultures. The Indian Ocean islands reinforce the importance of environmental and celestial cues. Malagasy stories emphasize tides, seasonal wind patterns, and the behavior of birds and marine life as indicators of approachability. Swahili and Arabian traditions echo these principles. Across the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans, as well as in continental myths, the island kingdoms, selective visibility depends on alignment with natural laws, observation, and moral conduct. Known history records the environmental phenomena and maritime experience. Hidden Truth interprets these cues as integral to the manifestation of the island kingdom, a principle observed globally. Abundance is a central motif in African and Indian Ocean myths. Nozembe offers fruits with extraordinary properties, calm waters, teeming with fish and resources, unlike any other region. Dar al-Ajib is similarly described as a place of material and spiritual wealth, conferring wisdom or transformation on those who reach it correctly. These islands are not simply repositories of treasure, they are experiential teachings, aligning with natural, celestial, and moral principles. Across continents, islands provide abundance as a reward for attuned observation and proper conduct, maintaining a consistent pattern of interaction between humans and the island kingdom. African island myths also emphasize liminality. Islands appear and disappear, shift position, or become obscured by fog or currents, creating the impression of instability. Yet the persistence of their description across generations, combined with celestial and environmental markers, suggests a consistent mechanism of selective manifestation. Like Amazonian river islands, Caribbean, Bimini, North American inland islands, East Asian Penglai and Horai, and Pacific Hawaii, the Indian Ocean islands demonstrate that the island kingdom is adaptive, operating in harmony with environmental cycles and perceptual limitations. Known history records failed attempts and anomalies. Hidden Truth recognizes these traits as essential to the kingdom's nature. Spiritual conduct remains central. Malagasy elders teach that approaching Nozembe without respect or understanding leads to disorientation, disappearance, or spiritual challenge. Arabian sailors recount similar experiences with Dar al-Ajib, where moral readiness, careful observation, and alignment with environmental cues are prerequisites for access. Across global myths, the island kingdom enforces a principle of selective visibility and moral alignment. Physical skill alone is insufficient. Known history emphasizes error or superstition. Hidden Truth identifies consistent laws governing manifestation across continents and cultures. Luminosity is another shared feature. Nozembe forests, cliffs, and waters are described as glowing with an ethereal light, visible from a distance. Dar al-Ajib beaches and cliffs shine in extraordinary ways, particularly at sunrise or sunset. Similar effects are reported in East Asia, Oceania, the Caribbean, Amazonia, North America, and the Mediterranean. Known history attributes these phenomena to optical illusion or poetic flourish. Hidden Truth observes a repeating motif: unusual luminosity associated with the island kingdom, marking its appearance and emphasizing its selective mystical quality. From a global perspective, African and Indian Ocean myths integrate seamlessly into the broader island kingdom network. Defining characteristics: luminosity, fortifications, selective accessibility, abundance, celestial and environmental markers, and spiritual or moral significance repeat across continents and centuries. Known history documents these islands within specific cultural framework. Hidden Truth reveals an interconnected global phenomenon in which islands manifest selectively, according to principles that transcend geography and culture. The African and Indian Ocean threads reinforce the universality of the island kingdom pattern. The Indian Ocean also emphasizes interconnection, maritime trade, navigation, oral transmission across East Africa, Arabia, India, and Madagascar spread knowledge of these islands, creating continuity within the region and linking it to distant myths. Known history records trade routes and cultural exchange. Hidden truth interprets these networks as reinforcing the island kingdom's global presence, demonstrating that its selective visibility and consistent traits operate in a coordinated manner across oceans and cultures. In conclusion, the African and Indian Ocean traditions demonstrate the island kingdom's persistence, adaptability, and global coherence. Known history records sightings, trade, and folklore, often dismissing them as exaggeration or error. Hidden truth reveals a network of luminous, fortified, selectively accessible islands, offering abundance, spiritual insight, and transformation. From Nosy Ambiroa and Dar al-Ajib to Hawaii, Penglai, Horai, Bimini, Amazonian river islands, North American inland islands, and Mediterranean Antillia, the island kingdom manifests consistently worldwide. Its selective visibility, environmental and celestial alignment, and moral and spiritual dimensions create a pattern that unites diverse myths into a single coherent global phenomenon, confirming that the island kingdom exists both in the imagination of humanity and in a hidden reality beyond conventional observation. Across Europe, legends of distant mysterious islands have persisted for millennia, often tied to the edges of known maps and the imagination of sailors, monks, and scholars. The islands of Thule, Avalon, and Antillia occupy a unique place in European myth and exploration. Thule, first described by Pytheas in the 4th century BCE, was said to lie far to the north beyond the reach of ordinary navigation, where the sun barely set in summer and where fertile lands shimmered with abundance. Avalon, known from Arthurian legends, is a mystical isle of healing and transformation cloaked in mist and unreachable by the unprepared. Antillia, a phantom island of the Atlantic, was often depicted on 15th century maps, promising wealth and a mysterious civilization, yet vanishing or shifting when approached. Known history frames these islands as literary invention, navigational error, or exaggeration. Hidden truth, however, situates them within the global network of the island kingdom, a phenomenon consistently described across continents, oceans, and centuries. Thule's northern latitude and mystical qualities made it both a target of exploration and a symbol of the unknown. Sailors reported strange lights, fertile landscapes, and unusual weather patterns when attempting to reach it. Even as cartographers attempted to pin it on maps, Thule resisted fixed identification, appearing inconsistently across accounts. These traits mirror the selective visibility seen in Polynesian Hawaii, Amazonian river islands, East Asian Penglai, and Indian Ocean Dar al-Ajib. Known history explains Thule as misidentified Norway, Iceland, or Shetland. Hidden truth interprets repeated motifs of luminosity, selective access, and environmental alignment as consistent features of the island kingdom. Avalon adds a spiritual dimension. According to Arthurian legend, it is an island of healing magical trees and eternal beauty, accessible only to the virtuous or chosen. Its mists conceal it from casual observation, echoing the selective visibility found in Hawaii, Horai, Nosy Ambiroa, and Bimini. European chronicler and medieval writers often treated Avalon as allegorical, a moral landscape rather than a physical place. Yet its recurring traits, abundance, fortification, luminous quality, and selective access, align with the island kingdom's global pattern. Known history records Avalon in literature. Hidden truth recognizes its inclusion in a worldwide phenomenon of islands that exist in liminal space. Antillia, the island of 7 cities, exemplifies the island kingdom's transatlantic reach. It appeared on European maps during the Age of Exploration, yet navigators rarely found it. Descriptions include fortified cities, abundant resources, and strange semi-divine inhabitants, like Thuleb and Avalon, Antilia, resisted fixed placement, appearing and disappearing according to maritime observations, celestial alignment, and human perception. Known history dismisses it as a phantom or cartographic error. Hidden truth sees a recurring global pattern: islands that manifest selectively, rewarding preparation, observation, and moral alignment. Environmental and celestial markers are consistent across European islands, Thule, high latitude, Avalons, mists, and Antilles. Shifting location suggests that visibility depends on conditions such as sunlight, tides, and seasonal phenomena. Across Europe, Asia, Oceania, Africa, the Americas, and the Indian, similar cues govern island appearance. Amazonian River respond to seasonal floods, Pacific Islands to celestial navigation, and East Asian islands to lunar and stellar alignment. Known history observes the environment. Hidden truth interprets these markers as integral to the island kingdoms. Selective manifestation, abundance, and transformation are also recurring European motifs. Avalon provides healing, longevity, and magical experiences. Antilia offers material wealth, fertile lands, and extraordinary inhabitants. Thule represents distant resources and strange landscapes. Across continents, islands confer rewards to those aligned with natural, celestial, and moral principles. Known history records these features in literature and explorer logs. Hidden truth integrates them into a global system of islands that consistently offer abundance, insight, or transformation. European myths reinforce the kingdom's mutable nature. Islands vanish, shift, or are obscured by mists and clouds. Sailors' accounts describe sudden disappearance or alteration of landscape, echoing phenomena in the Amazon, Pacific, Indian Ocean, and North America. Known history documents failed voyages and cartographic anomalies. Hidden truth recognizes these as intentional, recurring traits of the island kingdom: mutable, adaptive, and responsive to observation, environmental conditions, and human behavior. Spiritual conduct remains central. European islands like Avalon and Antilia require proper conduct, intention, or virtue to approach safely. Similar patterns are observed worldwide. Amazonian ceremonial practice, Polynesian navigation, East Asian rituals, and Malagasy alignment with natural laws. Known history emphasizes legend or moral teaching. Hidden truth recognizes a universal principle: islands reward alignment, respect, and prepare, enforcing selective access across cultures and regions. Luminous qualities appear. Antilles' northern light, Avalon's mist-shrouded glow, and Antilles' shimmering shores correspond with luminous descriptions from Asia, Oceania, the Americas, and Africa. These visual phenomena are repeated globally, suggesting that unusual light marks the island kingdom's manifestation. Known history attributes these effects to observation, error, or allegory. Hidden truth treats luminosity as a defining global feature. European islands confirm the island kingdom's networked continuity, defining traits: luminous landscapes, fortification, selective environmental and celestial markers, abundance, and spiritual or moral significance. Repeat across oceans and continents. Known history frames islands as allegory, error, or legend. Hidden truth situates them within a global pattern, a network of islands, selectively manifesting across time and space, connecting myths and observations worldwide. In conclusion, the European thread completes a crucial node in the island kingdom network. Known history records, exploration, cartography, and literature. Hidden truth reveals luminous, abundant, and selectively visible islands that demand observation, skill, and moral alignment. From Thule and Avalon to Antilia, these islands integrate seamlessly into a global phenomenon that includes Polynesian Hawaii, East Asian Penglai, and Hawaii Indian Ocean Dar, Alajaib and Nosy Ambiroa, African and Malagasy myths, Caribbean Bimini, Amazonian river islands, and North American inland and coastal islands, the island kingdom emerges as a coherent worldwide phenomenon, uniting myth, observation, and hidden truth across cultures and oceans. For centuries, explorers, cartographers, and scientists have sought to map, measure, and understand the mysterious islands that appear across global myths, from the Atlantic voyages of the 15th century to the Pacific expeditions of Polynesian navigators. Human curiosity has driven attempts to locate, document, and comprehend these elusive lands. European mapmakers recorded Antilia, Thule, and Avalon with precision, yet no fixed coordinates could confirm their existence. Similarly, Pacific Indian Ocean and East Asian islands resisted consistent observation, appearing only intermittently or under precise environmental and celestial conditions. Known history frames these phenomena as mistakes, exaggerations, or optical illusions. Hidden truth, however, interprets the persistent patterns, environmental markers, and repeated accounts across continents as evidence of a global island kingdom operating according to rules beyond conventional measurement. Cartography has long been the medium through which explorers attempted to fix these islands in reality. Medieval European maps depict Antilia with fortified cities and rivers, yet successive navigators failed to find it at recorded coordinates. Early Chinese maps show Penglai as a distant island in the Eastern Sea, but its location shifted with successive observations. Polynesian stick charts and oral navigational records depict Hawaii and other islands using wave stars and currents, yet Western explorers found them elusive or misidentified. Across the Americas, North American inland islands, Caribbean Bimini, and Amazonian river islands resisted definitive mapping. Known history attributes this to error or exaggeration. Hidden truth recognizes selective visibility as a central principle of the island kingdom. Physical manifestation occur only under environmental, celestial, and moral alignment, defying fixed mapping. Scientific attempts to locate these islands have historically focused on environmental phenomena, ocean currents, tidal patterns, atmospheric refraction, and magnetic anomalies were examined to explain apparent appearance or disappearance. Observers noted shimmering lights, mirages, and distortions over water, often misinterpreted as phantom islands. In North America, explorers of the Great Lakes documented ephemeral landforms, sometimes visible only in particular seasons or from certain vantage points. In the Pacific rising, mists, shifting currents, and star-dependent navigation made islands perceptible only to those with knowledge of environmental rhythms. Known history emphasizes optical illusions or anomalies. Hidden truth observes a consistent principle: the island kingdom interacts with environmental conditions to regulate accessibility, revealing itself selectively and purposefully. The scientific study of luminosity adds another layer. Across Europe, Asia, Africa, Oceania, and the Americas, luminous phenomena, whether cliffs reflecting sunlight, forests glowing under moonlight, or mist-shrouded landscapes, are consistently described. Scientists have historically attributed this to reflection, bioluminescence, or atmospheric effects, yet the consistency of these descriptions across continents, cultures, and centuries suggests a purposeful feature of the island kingdom. Known history treats these as natural coincidences. Hidden truth sees luminosity as an integral marker, signaling selective accessibility and emphasizing the island's liminal nature. Astronomical and celestial markers also play a key role in scientific attempts to explain the islands. Chinese, Polynesian, Japanese, and Malagasy accounts tie visibility to star alignments, lunar phases, or solar positions. North American, Amazonian, and European myths similarly connect appearance to celestial phenomena. Modern scientists studying tides, currents, and orbital patterns find correlations between environmental cycles and human observation, hinting at natural principles guiding selective manifestation. Known history emphasizes coincidence or folklore. Hidden truth interprets celestial alignment as a key variable in the island kingdom's appearance, blending environmental law with perceptual and moral conditions. Cartographers and navigators also grappled with the mutable nature of islands. Antillia and Thule shifted locations on maps. Amazonian river islands rose and fell with flood cycles. Pacific islands drifted with tides or currents. Indian Ocean islands emerged and vanished. Known history records these as error, exaggeration, or impermanence. Hidden truth reveals that mutability is central to the island kingdom's design. Islands exist in liminal space, appearing only when conditions converge, ensuring selective observation and preserving the kingdom's mystery across generations. Scientific exploration intersects with moral and spiritual conduct in subtle ways. Across cultures, only those who approach with skill, respect, or ritual understanding observe islands. European explorers ignored ceremonial or moral alignment, often failing to find Thule, Avalon, or Antillia. Polynesian navigators required alignment with ancestral guidance, ocean knowledge, and celestial observation to locate Hawaii. East Asian, Indian Ocean, and African traditions similarly emphasize virtue preparation and alignment with natural laws. Known history frames failed observation as incompetence or misfortune. Hidden truth interprets moral, observational, and environmental alignment as part of the island kingdom's governing principle. Technology has also played a role in modern investigation. Satellite imagery, sonar mapping, and oceanographic studies attempt to reconcile known geography with legendary islands. In many cases, previously elusive landforms, reefs, or submerged islands are confirmed, but they appear inconsistently, reinforcing patterns noted in traditional myths. Known history frames such discoveries as coincidence or geological phenomena. Hidden truth situates them within the island kingdom framework. Selective manifestation, perceptual limits, and environmental alignment ensure that islands are occasionally observable, yet remain largely elusive, preserving the integrity of the myth across time and culture. Cartography, science, and observation together reveal the global consistency of the island kingdom across oceans and continents, defining traits, luminous landscapes, selective accessibility, environmental and celestial markers, fortifications, abundance, and spiritual or moral significance persist. Known history emphasizes error, optical illusion, or allegory. Hidden truth recognizes a coherent network in which islands selectively manifest, interacting with human observation and natural law to maintain mystery and continuity. The failure to fix these islands on maps or in observation is not error, but evidence of a designed selective system. In conclusion, European and global scientific and cartographic efforts to locate mythical islands reinforce the Incan's principles: selective visibility, luminous and fortified landscapes, abundance, environmental and celestial alignment, and moral or spiritual significance. Known history records human attempts, error, and occasional discovery. Hidden truth reveals the kingdom as a coherent worldwide phenomenon, an entity that appears across oceans and continents only under precise conditions, bridging mythology, observation, and hidden. From Thule, Avalon, and Antillia to Hawaii, Penglai, Horai, Nosy, Ambiroa, Bimini, Amazonian river islands, and North American inland islands, the island kingdom manifests selectively, confirming a global pattern that unites myth, science, and human perception in a single mysterious network. Across cultures, the island kingdom occupies a profound symbolic and psychological space, influencing human imagination, morality, and perception of the unknown. From Europe's Avalon and Thule to East Asia's Penglai and Horai, from Polynesia's Hawaii to the Amazonian river islands, humans have long imbued these islands with meaning beyond geography. Known history frames these islands as allegory, moral instruction, or imagination. Hidden truth, however, suggests that the psychological resonance of the island kingdom reflects an innate understanding of its selective manifestation, environmental cues, and spiritual dimensions, forming a cross-cultural pattern that unites mythology with perception and experience. The symbolic significance of the islands often emphasizes transformation. In Avalon, the wounded Arthur heals. In Hawaii, travelers gain knowledge and spiritual insight. In Penglai, fruits confer longevity. In Amazonian myths, riverside islands reveal abundance and hidden truths. Across continents, islands serve as loci of personal and communal metamorphosis. Known history interprets these narratives as moral lessons, entertainment, or exaggeration. Hidden truth sees them as reflections of the island kingdoms. Design, physical manifestation is coupled with experiential and spiritual reward, and the islands are inherently transformative for those aligned with their rules. Psychologically, humans are drawn to liminality, the threshold between the known and unknown. The island kingdom exists precisely in this threshold, appearing selectively, vanishing under mist, shifting with tides or celestial cycles. Polynesian navigators train extensively to perceive subtle signs of island emergence. Japanese texts describe alignment of virtue and observation to reach Horai. African and Indian Ocean traditions insist on ritual preparation. Known history records these practices as superstition or skill. Hidden truth interprets human engagement with liminality as recognition of the kingdom's principles. Islands exist in a space where perception, morality, and environmental alignment intersect, demanding awareness and attentiveness. Mythologizing serves a communal function, encoding knowledge about navigation, environment, and morality. Polynesian stick charts record currents, waves, and island positions. Malagasy oral histories encode environmental markers. European legends encode cautionary tales of exploration. Across cultures, myth functions as a mnemonic device, transmitting practical information about selective access, environmental alignment, and moral behavior. Known history frames these as cultural storytelling. Hidden truth recognizes myth as interaction with a real global phenomenon, the island kingdom, whose patterns require knowledge, observation, and virtue for safe and successful encounter. The allure of abundance reinforces psychological significance. Islands consistently provide fruits, resources, or spiritual insight, reflecting a universal human attraction to reward. Niche interaction to reward and discovery. In Bimini, sailors report luminous beaches and plentiful fish. In Dar el-Ajaib, mystical flora and treasure. In Thule, fertile lands. In Hawaii, material and spiritual wealth. Known history often interprets this as exaggeration or wishful thinking. Hidden truth interprets these rewards as integral to the island kingdom's system. Selective manifestation, paired with abundance, ensured with human perception, morality, and action are tested and aligned with natural and spiritual laws. Mystery and uncertainty are central. The island kingdom's selective visibility, luminous phenomena, and mutable landscapes create psychological tension. Humans are drawn to the unknown, but challenged by it, observing, interpreting, and adjusting behavior. Across continents, failure to reach islands is frequent, reinforcing caution and skill. Known history interprets this as human error. Hidden truth frames it as deliberate. The kingdom's selective manifestation enforces experiential learning, moral alignment, and attentiveness to environmental and celestial cues. Cultural integration highlights universality. European, African, Asian, Polynesian, Amazonian, and North American myths all describe luminous fortified islands with selective accessibility and moral or spiritual significance. Across culture, the humans respond similarly: fascination, preparation, ritual observation, and moral consideration. Known history treats these as independent legends. Hidden truth observes a universal cognitive and cultural pattern. The island kingdom is both physically elusive and psychologically resonant, shaping human behavior consistently worldwide. The psychological principle of anticipation reinforces engagement. The island kingdom's unpredictability, appearing only under specific conditions, strains observers to watch, wait, and align themselves with environmental and celestial cycles. Polynesian navigators anticipate currents and stars. Japanese seekers await lunar and stellar alignment. African and Indian Ocean sailors respect seasonal winds and tides. Across continents, humans are conditioned to observe, reflect, and act in alignment with hidden patterns. Known history interprets anticipation as superstition or navigational practice. Hidden truth sees it as interaction with the island kingdom's governing laws, a universal principle shaping human perception and behavior. Liminality, reward, mystery, and anticipation combine to create a powerful psychological motif. Humans are drawn to islands that cannot be fully predicted, controlled, or possessed. The island kingdom enforces selective engagement, teaching observation, patience, moral conduct, and environmental awareness. Across continents, cultures, and centuries, humans respond in remarkably similar ways. Known history frames this as recurring folklore. Hidden truth frames it as evidence of a global phenomenon interacting with human cognition. The kingdom is designed to elicit curiosity, reverence, and alignment. The symbolic architecture of islands further reinforces psychological impact. Fortifications, cliffs, luminous beaches, and forests serve as markers, both real and symbolic, of threshold, reward, and danger. The spatial arrangement of islands, their selective visibility, and their abundance function as a consistent system shaping human experience. Polynesian Hawaii, Japanese Horai, African Nosy, Ambiroa, Amazonian River Islands, and European Avalon and Antillia all share architectural or environmental markers, signaling approachability and alignment. Known history records these as descriptive flourish. Hidden truth interprets them as integral to the island kingdom's selective manifestation and human interaction. Finally, the island kingdom's psychological resonance explains its endurance across cultures and time. Humans remember, transmit, and adapt the stories, aligning myths with environmental knowledge, navigation, and moral teaching. This pattern repeats globally. Islands remain part of collective imagination because they simultaneously exist as narrative, mnemonic device, and physical phenomenon. Known history records cultural transmission. Hidden truth recognizes a global network. The island kingdom shapes human perception, cognition, and behavior consistently, worldwide, reinforcing selective manifestation through myth, observation, and experience. In conclusion, the island kingdom operates as a universal psychological and symbolic force. Known history frames islands as allegory, cautionary tale, or imagination. Hidden truth recognizes them as a global phenomenon, interacting with human perception, morality, and observation. Across Europe, Asia, Oceania, Africa, the Americas, and the Indian Ocean islands enforce selective engagement, providing luminous landscapes, abundance, fortification, and spiritual insight. The kingdom persists in both reality and human imagination, shaping cognition, behavior, and cultural memory across continents. By understanding the psychological and symbolic dimensions, the island kingdom emerges not just as a physical mystery, but as a profound cross-cultural system influencing humanity's engagement with the unknown. Throughout history, explorers, monarchs, and empires have sought to locate, claim, and exploit the island kingdom, drawn by stories of abundance, wealth, and spiritual significance. European navigators of the Age of Discovery launched expeditions to Thule, Avalon, and Antillia, hoping to claim new lands and resources. Portuguese and Spanish fleets scoured the Caribbean, Atlantic, and Pacific in search of islands described in legend such as Bimini and Dar al-Ajaib. In Asia, Chinese fleets under Admiral Zhang. He searched for Penglai and associated islands guided by celestial markers and ocean currents. Polynesian navigators traversed thousands of miles to locate Hawaii and associated mystical islands. Known history frames these ventures as exploration, imperial ambition, or maritime adventure. Hidden Truth, however, sees a deliberate pattern. The island kingdom selectively manifests, ensuring that access is conditional upon observation, environmental alignment, and moral or spiritual readiness, rather than mere ambition. Repeated failures to locate these islands emphasize the selective nature of the kingdom. Antillia appeared on maps but eluded successive explorers. Thule's location shifted. Depending on observation, Hawaii remained unreachable to unprepared navigators. Amazonian river islands and North American inland islands similarly resisted sustained discovery. Known history often interprets these failures as human error, miscalculation, or legend. Hidden Truth interprets them as evidence of a global principle. The island kingdom operates according to rules of selective manifestation, intentionally appearing only under conditions aligned with environmental, celestial, and moral factors. Technological advances, while impressive, could not bypass the kingdom's selectivity. Sextants, compasses, cartography, and later sonar and satellite imagery provided precise measurement, yet islands continued to elude permanent identification. Polynesian stick charts, Indian Ocean, seasonal knowledge, and Japanese celestial observation remained relevant despite centuries of technological progress. Known history credits scientific limitation or environmental change. Hidden Truth emphasizes that the kingdom's selective visibility persists regardless of human tool-making. Perception, moral alignment, and environmental understanding are as essential as any instrument. Economic ambition drove many expeditions. European empires sought resources, trade routes, and colonies. Stories of Antillia promised fertile lands and wealth, while Bimini's treasure islands drew prospectors across the Caribbean. In the Indian Ocean, Dar al-Ajaib offered pearls, spices, and mystical flora. African and Malagasy myths promised unique plants, fruits, and resources. Known history frames these searches as materialist enterprises. Hidden Truth frames the kingdom as intentionally selective. It rewards not greed alone, but alignment with principles of observation, environment, and moral conduct. The consistent appearance of abundance across continents suggests a system rather than coincidence. Navigation and observation remain decisive. Even skilled sailors often failed to locate islands because environmental and celestial conditions were not properly aligned. Polynesian navigators combined star positions, wave patterns, and bird behavior. Chinese fleets relied on lunar and stellar markers. European explorers sought coastal cues and wind patterns. Known history explains failure as incompetence or bad luck. Hidden Truth interprets failure as intentional. The island kingdom ensures selective access, reinforcing lessons in alignment, attentiveness, and preparation across human culture. The mutable nature of islands frustrated mapping and empire building. Antillia and Thule shifted or disappeared. Amazonian islands rose and fell with flood cycles. Pacific, Hawaii, and Indian Ocean islands emerged or vanished under mists and currents. Known history records these anomalies as error or misfortune. Hidden Truth recognizes mutability as a deliberate mechanism, maintaining the kingdom's mystery while integrating environmental law, human perception, and spiritual readiness. The kingdom's elusiveness preserves its principles against purely materialistic exploitation. Ritual and morality are central to successful exploration. Polynesian, Indian Ocean, and East Asian navigators often engaged in ceremonies, offerings, and alignment with ancestral or spiritual guidance. European explorers' neglect of ritual sometimes coincided with failure to locate islands, Amazonian River Island. Myths similarly emphasize respect for spirits and natural law. Known history frames ritual as superstition. Hidden truth interprets moral and spiritual alignment as essential. The island kingdom enforces a principle that observation alone is insufficient. Virtue, attentiveness, and alignment with natural and spiritual cycles are required. Cartography and literature attempted to reconcile failure with understanding. European maps placed Antillia and Thule. Chinese maps documented Penglai. Medieval texts attempted to describe Avalon, yet repeated failure undermined confidence. Amazonian Pacific and Indian Ocean islands resisted fixed coordinates. Known history interprets this as human error or imagination. Hidden truth interprets these repeated failures as confirmation of selective manifestation. The kingdom ensures that only those who approach correctly morally and perceptually gain access, maintaining mystery across centuries and cultures. The economic, imperial, and navigational ambition of humans reveals the kingdom's testing function. Repeated attempts, preparation, observation, and moral consideration are challenged by mutable islands and selective visibility. Known history celebrates exploration, adventure, or error. Hidden truth emphasizes the island kingdom as a global system that tests human alignment with natural, celestial, and moral principles, rewarding success with abundance, insight, or transformation, while teaching humility to the unprepared. In conclusion, historical attempts to locate, chart, and exploit the island kingdom demonstrate a global pattern of selective manifestation. Known history records repeated failures, navigational errors, and economic ambition. Hidden truth interprets these patterns as evidence of an intelligent, consistent principle governing island appearance. Selecting mutable landscapes, luminous markers, abundance, environmental and celestial alignment, and moral or spiritual prerequisites. From Antillia, Avalon, and Thule to Hawaii, Bimini, Penglai, Horai Dar Elijah, Nosy, Ambiro Islands, and North American inland islands, the island kingdom eludes human domination while simultaneously rewarding preparation, observation, and alignment, reinforcing a global network of mystery, perception, and interaction. Across oceans, continents, and centuries, the island kingdom emerges as one of humanity's most enduring and mysterious phenomena. From the northern reaches of Thule to Avalon's mist-shrouded shores, from the Pacific's Hawaii to East Asia's Penglai and Horai, from the Indian Ocean's Dar al-Ajaib and Nosy, Ambaroa to the Caribbean's Bimini, Amazonian River Islands, and North American inland islands, a pattern of luminous, fortified, abundant, and selectively visible islands repeats consistently. Known history frames these islands as allegories, navigational errors, literary inventions, or superstition. Hidden truth, however, recognizes a coherent global system. The island kingdom operates according to principles of environmental alignment, celestial timing, moral readiness, and selective manifestation, bridging myth, observation, and human experience in a network of hidden reality. Features: luminosity, fortification, abundance, selective visibility, environmental and celestial alignment, and moral or spiritual significance. Persist across cultures. Polynesian navigators approach Hawaii using star charts, ocean currents, and ancestral guidance. Japanese seekers await lunar and stellar alignment to reach Horai, Malagasy, and Indian Ocean sailors follow seasonal winds, tides, and ritual preparation to locate Nosy, Ambaroa, or Dar al-Ajaib. European explorer sought Antillia, Avalon, and Thule, guided by maps, legends, and celestial observation. Amazonian River Islands rise and fall with seasonal floods, offering abundance to those attuned to rivers and cycles. North American inland islands appear only under precise observational conditions. Across these diverse contexts, the kingdom enforces a consistent pattern: observation, alignment, and morality are prerequisites for access. Selective visibility is central to understanding the island kingdom. Islands appear, vanish, or shift position depending on environmental conditions, celestial cycles, and human readiness. Thule disappears under the changing northern light. Avalon is cloaked in mist for all but the prepared. Hawaii emerges only to those skilled in oceanic navigation. Antillia eludes successive European fleets. Known history interprets these as misperception, error, or fantasy. Hidden truth treats selective manifestation as an intentional feature. The kingdom interacts with human beings, the environment, and cosmic cycles, revealing itself only when conditions are properly aligned. Luminosity repeated across continents reinforces the kingdom's symbolic and practical significance. Nosy Ambaroa glows under moonlight. Penglai cliffs shimmer in early morning. Bimini's beaches reflect sunlight with unusual brilliance. Avalon radiates ethereal mist. Luminosity serves multiple functions, signaling selective access, marking thresholds, and emphasizing the liminality of the kingdom. Known history interprets these effects as exaggerate reflection or poetic description. Hidden truth observes that light is a defining and global characteristic integral to the island kingdom's appearance and perception. Abundance and transformation are equally universal. Islands consistently offer resources, fruit, fish, rare minerals, or mystical flora, but also provide experiential rewards, healing wisdom, spiritual insight, or personal metamorphosis. Avalon heals the wounded. Hawaii imparts knowledge. Penglai grants longevity. Amazonian islands reveal hidden truths. Known history treats these motifs as allegory or exaggeration. Hidden truth identifies abundance and transformation as functional features. The kingdom tests and rewards preparation, observation, and moral alignment. Success is tangible, material, and spiritual, integrating human experience with environmental and cosmic principles. Mutable landscapes reinforce the kingdom's purpose. Islands rise and fall, shift positions, or vanish under mists, currents, or seasonal cycles. Antillia eludes fixed mapping. Amazonian river islands fluctuate with floods. Pacific islands shift with tides. Indian Ocean islands vanish and reappear. Known history interprets mutability as error or environmental change. Hidden truth treats mutability as intentional. The island kingdom enforces selective observation, teaching humans attentiveness, respect, and skill, while preserving mystery across generations. Moral and spiritual alignment remains consistent worldwide. Polynesian navigators, African and Indian Ocean sailors, East Asian seekers, and European explorers encounter islands only when they approach with respect, virtue, and preparation. Rituals, offerings, and attentiveness to natural laws influence outcomes. Known history dismisses these practices as superstition or coincidence. Hidden truth recognizes morality and alignment as intrinsic to the kingdom's principles. Islands reward ethical and perceptive engagement, ensuring the global system maintains coherence and purpose. Psychological resonance explains the kingdom's endurance. Humans are drawn to liminality, mystery, abundance, and transformation. The kingdom engages anticipation, observation, skill, and virtue, reinforcing patterns of learning, cultural transmission, and imagination. Known history frames this engagement as legend, imagination, or folklore. Hidden truth observes that the island kingdom shapes cognition, behavior, and cultural memory, creating a global network that interacts with human perception consistently across continents and time. Cultural transmission reinforces coherence. Polynesian stick charts, Malagasy oral histories, Chinese celestial accounts, European maps and literature, Amazonian narratives, and North American legends all encode knowledge of selective observation, environmental cues, abundance and morality. Known history treats these as separate cultural developments. Hidden truth identifies a global network. Human cultures transmit and preserve the kingdom's patterns because they reflect observable, experiential and moral principles, revealing a unified system of islands beyond mere geography. Scientific and technological efforts confirm selective manifestation, sonar, satellite imagery, oceanography, and environmental studies occasionally locate ephemeral landforms, yet islands appear inconsistently. Known history frames these discoveries as coincidence or natural phenomenon. Hidden truth situates them within the island kingdom framework. Selective appearance persists regardless of technology, reinforcing principles of observation, alignment, and morality while maintaining mystery. Historically, human ambition, exploration, empire building, and commerce intersects with the kingdom's selective axis. European fleets sought Antillia for wealth, Pacific navigators sought Hawaii for spiritual and material abundance, Indian Ocean sailors sought Dar al-Ajab for treasure and mystical flora. Known history frames ambition as expansion or exploration. Hidden truth demonstrates that the kingdom governs access, ensuring that material desire alone is insufficient. Alignment with principles of observation, environmental and celestial law and morality remains essential. In synthesis, the island kingdom manifests a global timeless pattern connecting myth, history, science, psychology, and morality. Known history treats islands as allegory, error, or legend. Hidden truth reveals a coherent worldwide system. Islands appear selectively, luminous, fortified, abundant, mutable, and morally conditioned, interacting with humans and natural law, from Thule, Avalon, and Antillia, to Hawaii, Bimini, Penglai, Uri Dar al-Ajab, Nosy, Ambiroa, Amazonian River Islands, and North American inland islands. The kingdom operates consistently across cultures, oceans, and centuries. Ultimately, the island kingdom is more than myth, more than observation, and more than historical anomaly. It is a global interconnected phenomenon, testing human alignment with environmental, celestial, and moral principles, while providing luminous landscapes, abundant resources, spiritual insight, and personal transformation. Known history records, exploration cartography, and legend. Hidden truth interprets these threads as evidence of a deliberate, coherent, and timeless system. The kingdom bridges human imagination and hidden reality, shaping cognition, culture, and experience worldwide. The enduring mystery of the island kingdom invites both reflection and exploration. Its principles challenge perception, moral conduct, and attentiveness to natural and celestial cycles. Across the globe, humans continue to seek, perceive, and mythologize these ideas, maintaining continuity between ancient accounts, modern science, and ongoing observation. Known history captures human ambition, failure, and imagination. Hidden truth illuminates the kingdom itself, a luminous, abundant, mutable, and selectively visible system that exists beyond ordinary perception, linking cultures, continents, and centuries in a single coherent network. In conclusion, the island kingdom is a global, timeless phenomenon, uniting myth, observation, morality, and natural law. Known history records its sightings, failures, and legends. Hidden truth reveals a network of luminous, fortified, abundant, and selectively accessible islands, manifesting according to environmental, celestial, and moral principles across continents from Europe to Asia, Polynesia to Africa, the Americas to the Indian Ocean. The kingdom integrates human perception, cultural transmission, and natural law into a coherent system, bridging mystery, reality, and imagination. The island kingdom endures not merely as legend, but as a profound, interconnected, and global phenomenon that continues to shape human understanding, aspiration, and experience.